us the chance to continue uh, our online short courses again in the fourth week. Today is the first week, Doctor. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
So we began with Dr. Zarita. Also because today should be begin with Dr. Ferdaus, but then we have a little bit problem of the technical. Inshallah, we will start with Dr. Zarita first. Before we begin with the session with Dr. Zarita, let me introduce a bit about her brief biodata a little bit. Madam Zarita Kassim is an academic fellow and she has extensive experience in communication, and she has been involved in extensive experience in communication, and she has been involved in the industry for more than 10 years. She has 9 years of experience as a producer and DJ in an Islamic radio station, Radio IKIM. She is also a corporate consultant, trainer and certified coach. And she's graduated from IIUM with a bachelor degree in communication. She's also obtained a Master of Information Management in University Technology Mara. She joined IIUM in 2023 and teach public relation, media production, and introduction to communication. With that, we will listen from her about ethic of communication. Yes, Doctor. Falyatafaddal ma'jura.
Thank you very much. Alhamdulillah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala syafiq anbiya wal mursalin. Wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Alhamdulillah, a very good morning to all the participants of Certificate in Integration of Knowledge for Human Sciences. And Alhamdulillah for your time and commitment this Saturday morning. And as you can see, I am live here from our very own studio from IIUM FM, located in HS building, IIHS IKHS. Alhamdulillah. So topic given to me is ethics in radio programming, and today going to look into integrating professional standards with Islamic principles to create ethical and responsible radio content. Okay, so why is this importance of us to talk about ethical practices in radio? Not only in radio, but last week one of my colleagues, Dr. Harun, have shared about ethics in journalism, in broadcasting as a whole, and today we're going to look into radio specifically. So ethical practices in radio programming are crucial. Why? It's for maintaining the public trust, because we are the media people, the broadcasters, the listeners, the viewers put trust on the broadcasters. So that is why we need to maintain the ethical practices in order to maintain the public trust at the same time. Secondly, preserving the integrity of the medium and upholding societal values. So to ensure that radio content aligns with the professional standards and moral principles, leading to more transparent, responsible and impactful broadcasting. It is a fun industry, but somehow it's also you are carrying a big responsibility. As radio producers and broadcasters, we are bound by a code of ethics that guides conduct in our presenting content. So this code is crucial as it helps broadcasters to navigate the complex landscape of media responsibilities, balancing entertainment with the need to educate and inform the public. That is our main purpose. And radio broadcasters must comply with ethical standards to fulfill the objectives of programming, which includes not only entertaining but also instilling values in the audience. All right. Okay. Talking about the code of practice, I'll show you, or we'll share several code of practice that we are using currently. The producer especially is the guardian of the program output, ensuring that it does not fall foul of the legal necessities placed on broadcasters. As you can see, this is me, yeah? But somehow this was 2008, if I'm not mistaken lah. Yeah? So as a radio broadcaster, we must adhere to the codes of practice, which act as a guidelines for creating responsible radio content. And these codes ensure that programs uphold ethical standards and align with Islamic teachings, of course, fostering a more transparent and accountable media environment. In UK, for example, they have Ofcom, or Office of Communication, where Ofcom Broadcasting Code sets out standards for all TV and radio programs. So normally all codes are protecting both or providing or guiding both mediums, TV and radio at the same time. So they have their own codes of guidance on fairness and privacy, on taste and decency and general program standards. And these codes typically address issues such as truthfulness and accuracy in reporting, fairness and impartiality in program content, respect for privacy and confidentiality, protection of children and vulnerable individuals, avoiding discrimination, responsible use of language and imagery. And inshallah, we're going to look this into in depth by one by one, inshallah. And adherence to these codes of practice is essential for maintaining the credibility and integrity of radio broadcasting, of course. Yeah. And in Malaysia, for instance, we also have Malaysian Code of Ethics for Journalists. Basically, this includes for social media journalists, because now this everything is on user-generated content, right? So the code, the Malaysian Code of Ethics for Journalists, outlines the principle and guidelines for ethical journalism practices in Malaysia. And besides that, we also have content code. The content code is the principal source for industry self-regulation, as it contains governing standards, the best practices for content dissemination within the communications and multimedia industry in Malaysia. Okay, even though it's for multimedia, but somehow for terrestrial broadcasters, for terrestrial station, they also have online or streaming platforms. So therefore, we can refer to the content code. Okay, next is Islamic principles in radio programming, right? So ethics in Islam, hold on. Okay, ethics in Islam, particularly as pertains to radio programming, is grounded in the principles derived from Quran and Sunnah. Even though we have the code of conduct or the code of practices, but somehow as Muslim, as part of the da'i, so we are derived from the Quran and Sunnah. The principles are derived from Quran and Sunnah. And these ethical guidelines are, of course, essential to ensure that radio contents aligns with our Islamic values and serves the community positively. Okay, the word positively, because sometimes it maybe the niyyah is aligned, it does not align with this values, but somehow they thought that it is good for the community. But somehow that is why, as broadcaster, radio content should be aligned with Islamic values and serve the community positively. The integration of Islamic da'wah into radio programming involved in all levels of radio programming, right? Before we look into the ethics, and but somehow we need to understand the levels or the processes of radio programming. So each stage of programming not only demands technical proficiency, but also adherence to ethical standards that uphold the values of journalism and broadcasting. All right. So I hope you can also enjoy the photos that I provide, because some of the photos, like this photo, this is one of our students from Philippines, and he is also one of our guests, in terms of our radio programming. The program called as Harun Talks, okay. So he shared on Islamic values, because he also one of the influencer preacher in Philippines. All right. Okay, and move on to aligning professional ethics and Islamic teachings. In ethics in Islam, particularly in the context of da'wah, okay, we look at it from the perspective of da'wah, which means encouraging good and preventing evil, where this is essential for guiding the conduct of broadcasters and ensuring that the messages are aligned with Islamic values again. Yeah. And the principles of Islamic ethics provide a framework for radio programming that not only informs but also uplifts the educates of the audience in a manner consistent with the teaching of Islam. Okay, this is stated in Ali Imran, verse 104, and let there be arising from you a nation inviting to all that is good, enjoining what is right, and forbidding what is wrong, and those will be the successful. So this is the basic guideline, the fundamental guideline, right? Okay, looking forward to stages of radio programming, okay? And we're going to look into the ethics phase by phase. Okay, first is the pre-production stage. In the pre-production stage involve planning and basically preparation for a radio program. And this includes brainstorming ideas, determining the program format, the selecting topics, preparing scripts, and also budgeting. And second is production phase, where during this phase, the actual broadcasting occurs, whether you are broadcasting live or you are recording the program, okay? And this includes recording the program, managing live interactions if it is applicable, and ensuring that the technical aspects of the broadcast are executed smoothly, okay? And thirdly is the post-production stage. And in this stage, it involves editing the recorded material, finalizing the content, and preparing it for broadcast. So this stage also includes evaluating the program's impact and gathering feedbacks from the audience, right? Okay, in these three stages, in pre-production, we will discuss on the truthfulness, honesty, and transparency, justice and fairness, as well as social responsibility. On second stage, production, the sensitivity to cultural diversity, respect for privacy, and the use of music and sound effect. And last but not least, in post-production, we're going to look into handling sensitive information and vulnerable subjects, corrections and accountability in post-broadcast, managing listeners' feedback, multi-platform ethics for radio content, and fast-checking and quality control. Okay, so these are the stages and the ethics that we're going to look into. Okay, first stage, the pre-production. As we mentioned earlier, the pre-production stage involves planning and preparation for the program, and this includes brainstorming ideas. The producer will set a session with the production team to have a brainstorming ideas where they determine the program format, selecting the topics, preparing the scripts, as well as the budgeting. And this stage is crucial for laying the foundation for a successful and impactful radio program, because this is a time for you to ensure that every element is carefully considered and executed in accordance with ethical guidelines. So this is the first phase, the fundamental phase, in order for you to plan the stage of the radio program process, the whole process. Yeah? So it involves defining the program's objective, who is the target audience, what is the content structure. Okay, and at this stage also, you have identified the host, the person in charge, and all the production team. So this stage is vital for ensuring the program effectively resonates with its intended audience and fulfill its intended purpose, promoting constructive engagement with the content. Right? Okay, the first ethics when we discuss under pre-production is truthful, honesty, and transparency. So ensuring that ideas reflect factual information. We have discussed on the idea, the concept, the content, and now especially for news, public affairs segments. Yeah. So plan content that aligns with facts and avoids manipulations. Research thoroughly need to be done, yeah, for us to get accurate information. So when dealing with complex or controversial topics, for instance, it is essential to present multiple perspectives and avoid biases. So we may discuss who is the suitable guests and whatsoever. So this ensures that audiences receive a balanced understanding of the issue. And it's also essential to ensure that the topics chosen for discussion are based on accurate information. So it's not just you pick any topic and you just invite any Tom, Dick and Harry. Yeah. So this involves thorough research and consultation with knowledgeable sources to avoid misinformation. This includes fact-checking information from various sources, avoiding relying solely on unverified information, and acknowledging limitations in data or information gatherings. So disclose intention behind the program, including sponsorship or paid segments to avoid misleading the audience. This includes transparently disclosing any potential conflicts of interest or financial connections that could influence the content of the program. So your major concern is in the content of the program. Yeah? Okay, for instance, I take one case study in terms of truthfulness, honesty, and transparency. This is based on FTC approved final orders against Google, right? This is on 2019, yeah, where the Federal Trade Commission has finalized consent orders, Google and iHeart Media settling allegations that they produce and add nearly 29,000 deceptive first-person endorsement by radio personalities, promoting the personalities' use of experience with Google Pixel 4 in 2019 and 2020. But according to FTC, in 2019, Google hired iHeartMedia and 11 other radio networks in 10 major markets to have radio personalities record and broadcast first-person endorsement of the Pixel 4 phone. Yeah? So Google provided iHeartMedia with the scripts detailing the personalities' experience with the Pixel 4. But however, the personalities were not provided with the Pixel 4 before recording and airing most of the ads, and therefore they did not regularly use the phone. Basically, they have no idea and they have no experience on using the phone. Yeah. So this principle is critical in Dawah as well. As broadcasters, we are expected to convey accurate and honest information, and the Quran emphasizes the importance of truth, and this is reflected in the ethical obligations of those engaged in Dawah especially. So the success of Dawah is significantly influenced by ethical conduct of the communicator itself, which includes being truthful and transparent in their messages. So this principle is essential for maintaining the credibility of the message and the messenger at the same time. So the commitment of truth fosters trust between the broadcaster and the audience, which is essential for effective comm. As stated in Al-Ahzab, verse 70, believers fear Allah and speak the truth. Even though Google and iHeartMedia, so it's important for us to deliver the right message, the accurate message. Okay, second, we move on to justice and fairness. Ensure that ideas reflect factual information, especially for news and public affairs again. Yeah, it's very important, especially for documentary, for talk shows program. We plan the content aligns with the facts and avoids manipulation. Research thoroughly is essential to ensure that topics chosen for discussion are based on accurate information, involve thorough research and consultation with knowledgeable sources to avoid misinformation. We may have several references to ensure it is not misinformation. So radio programming must remain impartial and unbiased, avoiding any political, religious or ideological learnings, and broadcasters should present information or perspective from diverse viewpoints to ensure listeners receive a balanced understanding. And the planning, in this planning phase, in the post-production phase, we should include diverse perspective, especially when dealing with sensitive topics. Even though we are government-owned station, but as a radio station, as a media, we are non-partisan to maintain our justice and fairness. All right. For this case study, I've chosen the BBC case last year, last November 2023. So the BBC has been accused with its journalists of failing, I guess this is very obvious to us, of failing to tell the story of the Israel-Palestine conflict accurately, investing greater effort in humanizing Israeli victims compared with Palestinians, and omitting key historical context in coverage. Okay, so the accusations made by the BBC journalists themselves. So they sent Al Jazeera the letter as a humanitarian disaster in Gaza escalates and as grim milestones are reached at peace. So they claim that the broadcaster carefully portrays Israeli suffering by, for instance, telling audiences the names of the victims, covering individual funerals, and interviewing affected families. But in comparison, humanizing coverage of Palestinian civilians has been lacking. So it is a poor excuse to say that BBC could not better cover stories in Gaza because of difficulties gaining access to the Gaza Strip. And the letter also says that the BBC has organized trauma support and listening sessions for staff affected by this conflict. All right, so it also happens in organization in broadcasting station as big as BBC. All right. Okay, in terms of public affairs programs, should be presented objectively without bias. Yeah, for example, during discussion or controversial topics, broadcasters should give equal airtime to diverse perspective and avoid promoting specific political agendas. If we are inviting two parties, then we have to give them both time to share their own opinions. So this ensures that audiences are informed and not misled by biased information. In Surah An-Nisa, verse 40, indeed, Allah does not do injustice even as much as atoms weight, while if there is a good deed, He multiplies it and gives for Himself a great reward, right? So it means that always be justice as media practitioners. Always practice justice and fairness. Okay, the third one is social responsibility. Okay, in your plannings, radio program plannings, we should also aim to inform and educate the objective as our objective. Educate the audience, contributing positively to the society. Yes, we have our target audience, but we have also our social responsibility. So this includes selecting the topics that promote public welfare and awareness of social issues. So the production team should consider the potential impact of their content to the audience. This includes avoiding harmful stereotypes and promoting messages that foster understanding and community engagement. So the distribution of the program should be approached with a sense of responsibility. This includes considering the potential reach of the program and its implication for the audience. It's not our own satisfaction only, but most important is the implication. How does it affect our audience? So Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, said, the faithful in their love for one another are in their having mercy for one another and in their kindness toward one another. Are like one body, when a member of it ails, all the parts of the body call one another to share the pain through sleeplessness and fever. Hadith riwayat by Muslim. So select topics that promote awareness, education or community building without causing harm. All right. Okay, an example of a radio program that focusing on social responsibility. I take one Malaysian radio station, that is Fly FM. They have a program called Fly FM Cares in Malaysia, and this program showcases initiative and campaigns aimed at addressing social issues, supporting communities and raising awareness on topics such as mental health, environmental sustainability, as well as charitable causes. For example, for instance, environmental awareness. The station promotes sustainability efforts by highlighting eco-friendly practices and organizing green campaigns such as recycling programs or cleanup events. In charity drives, they also involve in fundraising events, disaster relief efforts, and collaborations with local charities to assist vulnerable communities. And similarly, basically most radio in Malaysia, radio stations in Malaysia, we do produce such programs. Similarly, like Light FM, they also incorporated social responsibility into the content by focusing on health and wellness topics through segments such as the Light Breakfast, where experts discuss lifestyle changes and emotional well-being. So you can try to tune in any of our radio stations, and then you can find these kind of programs are very popular. Where these initiatives align with the concept of social responsibility by using the radio platform, not just for entertainment, but also to positively impact the society and empower the listeners with information and resources, because we are the information provider. All right. Okay, that's about our first stage in pre-production stage. All right. So we move on to the production, and we're going to look into the ethics in production process. All right. So if you have any questions, you can do so in our chat box. Yeah. Okay. In production stage encompasses the actual creation of the radio program. This includes scripting, recording, as well as editing. So this stage involves creating the actual content, which can be live or pre-recorded. After you plan, then in your plannings, you have decided whether you want to go for live or you want to go for pre-recorded. So this process involves careful planning, script writing, talent selection, as well as sound engineering and post-production editing to ensure the final product meets the highest quality standards and ethical considerations. Now we are talking about the standards. In planning, yes, we are talking about the standards, but more to the content program. Okay, the production stage requires a strong commitment to ethical practices, where this involve incorporating sensitivity to cultural diversity, upholding human dignity, and protecting individual privacy throughout the process. Additionally, producers must adhere to copyright laws, avoid conflicts of interest, maintain professionalism in all interactions. By prioritizing these ethical guidelines, radio productions can build trust with the audiences and contribute positively to their communities. Okay, and sometimes they also it's not between the producer or the host with the listeners or the viewers, but sometimes the hiccups also involve between the producer and the host or the DJ or the announcer. So in this phase or in this stage, sensitivity to cultural diversity also very, very important. Yeah? Why? Because producers, they should avoid stereotype and be aware of the cultural backgrounds of their audiences. Okay, we have identified our target audience, then we have to be very sensitive on their culture. So this includes selecting topics and language that are culturally sensitive and inclusive. So engaging with community representatives during the planning stage can help ensure that diverse voices are considered. So avoid stereotypes or culturally inappropriate themes, factor in holidays, for instance, or significant events to reflect the cultural values of the audience. Yeah? And radio programming must respect the inherent dignity and worth of the audience. Content should avoid demeaning, dehumanizing, or discriminatory messaging. Radio programming also should avoid using language that is offensive or insensitive to certain cultures. So when referring to individuals from different cultures, use respectful and accurate terms and avoid generalizations or stereotyping. So understanding and respecting cultures and diversity of your audience is crucial in fostering a positive and inclusive radio environment. Yeah? So for example, a radio station targeting a diverse community could dedicate specific segments to highlight cultural events, traditions, and perspective. And this promotes inclusivity and fosters a sense of belonging for listeners from different backgrounds. All right. For our case study in cultural diversity, I'm going to show, we're going to share after this in terms of how Radio Nepal inclusivity towards their listeners, right? Discussions around media coverage in Malaysia, for instance, often revolve around respecting in the three R's, that is the race, religion, and royalty. Yeah, emphasizing that journalists and broadcasters need to treat carefully in such areas. So the final product should reflect cultural sensitivity, ensuring that it resonates positively with the intended audience and does not perpetuate harmful or stereotypes or biases. Right? In Surah Al-Hujurat verse 13, did mention about the sensitivity of in diversity, or mankind. Indeed, we have created you from male and female and made you peoples and tribes that you may know each one another. And indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous of you. And indeed, Allah is knowing and acquainted. Okay, this is what I mentioned just now. Radio Nepal launches news and program broadcast in Bajika language. Okay, this is on 2024, or recently 13th February. Yeah. In Nepal, in Nepal, India. Okay, they have this radio called Radio Nepal lah. So the producers should aware of cultural diversity and ensure that the language and imagery used in the program are appropriate and respectful. Yeah, for example, this Radio Nepal that is on air 24/7 had been broadcasting news in 21 languages and programs in 20 languages before. Okay, meaning before February this year. And Bajika language speakers population is concentrated mainly in Rautahat Bara, Sarlahi among the district of the Madhya province. So the population of Bajika speakers in Nepal is nearly 1,133,000 as per the latest census. So Bajika is spoken by most number of people in Madhya province after Maithili and Bhojpuri languages, right? So it is the 6th place among all languages spoken in Nepal in terms of the number of speakers. So Radio Nepal's Executive Director, Budi Bahadur KC said, Radio Nepal is a model of an inclusive media in terms of languages, content and human resources. The local people's ownership towards the state media will increase with the broadcasting of news and programs in their mother tongue. So by understanding the culture context of the audience, the producers avoiding stereotypes ensure that context is respectful and inclusive. So this includes using culturally appropriate language, avoiding offensive jokes or references, and representing diverse perspective fairly. So they introduced and they started to use to add one more language in Radio Nepal, that is Bajika language. Okay, that's how they suits their target audience. So producers and announcers, they should strive to showcase the richness and diversity of cultures in their programming. Even though they had already 20 languages, but they add one more because it's crucial for the radio to fulfill the needs of their listeners. Yeah? So we should aware of the local customs and traditions and avoid making any content that could be offensive and respectful to any groups. All right, about cultural diversity. Okay. All right, if I'm too fast, you can just intrude me. Okay, second, respect for privacy. respecting the privacy of individuals featured in the program also crucial. Basically, all the processes are crucial, right? So this includes obtaining informed consent and being cautious about the use of sensitive information, right? It's imperative to safeguard personal details shared on air, as any breach of confidentiality can have severe consequences for the individuals involved and the reputation of the broadcaster itself, right? It is important to prioritize the protection of sensitive information, such as names, addresses, personal stories, unless explicit permissions given or granted by the individual involved. So by upholding these standards, radio broadcasters can foster trust and maintain a positive relationship with their audience. So the production team must continue to respect privacy concerns, ensuring that any personal stories shared are done with consent, okay, and that individuals are not exploited for any entertainment purposes. Yes, we are achieving our goals and objectives, but somehow we need to respect for privacy. Producers should be mindful of the potential impact of their content on the individuals involved and ensure that they are not portrayed in negative or disrespectful light. All right. Okay. For this case study, I chose Australian prank call. This is on December 11, 2012. Right? An Australian DJ who made a hoax call to a hospital caring for the Duchess of Cambridge made a tearful apology as the coroner ruled the nurse who answered the call to her own life after it was broadcast. So Jacinta Saldanha, 46, a night sister at King Edward VII Hospital in London, where the pregnant Duchess was being treated for severe morning sickness, was found hanged 3 days after the prank call by Melanie Craig and fellow DJ Mike Christian, pretending to be the Queen and Prince Charles. Okay, and the inquest heard Saldana blame herself for transferring the call, which she believed was genuine, on to the nurse caring for the Duchess, who revealed details of her condition broadcast on Sydney's 2-day FM radio station on 4th December 2012. I cannot imagine if I was the DJ. Okay, so respect for privacy is very, very crucial. We need to take pretty cautious actions because we never know what are the impacts. Prank calls, yes, it is interesting. It is fun to produce such programs, but somehow the impacts are very, very, we don't know what are the impacts would be. But somehow this is very violation of privacy, right? By being somebody else. Not even somebody else, but you are pretending to be the Queen and the Prince. Right? So take precautions not to disclose personal information on air unless explicit consent is given. That is for sure. Right? Before you get consent, before being approved, nothing can be shared or nothing can be broadcasted. So this includes avoiding the use of names, addresses, or identifying information without proper authorization. The production team should establish clear procedure for obtaining consent and handling sensitive information, ensuring that all individuals involved are fully aware how their information will be used, right? So for instance, during interview, ensure guests consent to how their information will be used so that we know which part can be on air or can be broadcasted or not. Right? In Surah An-Nur stated, verse 27, O you who believe, do not enter houses, even enter houses other than your own houses until you ascertain welcome and greet their inhabitants. That is best for you. Perhaps you'll be reminded. Even as Muslim, entering somebody's house also we need approval. Okay? What more on other people's information? Okay. We move on to the third ethics, use of music and sound effects. Okay, be cautious with how people or groups are portrayed through our editing choices, music or sound effects that we're going to use. Music director, sound engineer, producer, announcer, all these people, all this team in your production team need to ensure the correct use of licensed music to avoid copyright issues. So be mindful that sound effects are not offensive or misleading. Music and sound effects can be powerful tools for enhancing our radio programming. Yes, I do agree that. But their use must be approached with care and consideration. Music choices should align with the program's tone and content, and copyright restrictions should be strictly adhered to. We need to ensure that all music and sound effects are licensed appropriately, as unauthorized use can lead to legal repercussions. But somehow there are certain programs that you may not need any music at all or any sounds at all. Yeah? And similarly, sound effects should be selected thoughtfully to avoid being offensive, misleading, or distracting your listeners. So their primary function is to enhance the program's narrative or emotional impact, not to sensationalize it or manipulate the audience. By carefully considering the potential impact of music and sound effects, broadcasters can contribute to a more engaging and ethically responsible radio experience. Then we need to have a very critical listening skills, in terms of audio, in terms of the music, sounds, crucial listening skills. So they are very alert. For instance, some radio talk shows have used dramatic sound effects during discussions of sensitive topics like accidents, crimes, or natural disasters. And this can be perceived as unethical as well, as it diminishes the gravity of the situation and priorities entertainment over respectful reporting. Sometimes we don't need any sound or any background music or any effects, because such practices can breach broadcast ethics, as they can distort facts and harm listeners' emotions and disrespect the peoples affected by the events that we are covering. Okay? And from Surah Luqman verse 6, and of the people who is by the amusement of speech to mislead others from the way of Allah without knowledge, and who takes it in ridicule, this will have a humiliating punishment. Okay, so attribution, for instance, credit sources when using third-party content or pre-recorded interviews are also need to be highlighted. Plagiarism, in terms of ensuring your scripts, commentary, or promotional materials that use any sound effects are original and appropriately referenced. So we may need to know what are the sources that we are using, because nowadays you can easily access to any online musics and effects, right? For this case study, for this use music and sound effect case study, again in Malaysia, it happens, where Muslim Malaysia banned the hit song Despacito on the state radio and TV and branded it as un-Islamic porn. So if the broadcasters or producers are unaware of this kind of policies, then it's very, very crucial for us to remind or alert our broadcasters friends. The most streamed song in history will no longer be played in any of the government-run media outlets in Malaysia. This is on July 2017. Communication Minister during that time, Saleh Said Keruak, said the song was reviewed and banned because of public complaints that the lyrics are obscene. And he told to the Associated Press that a remix of the song featuring Justin Bieber is not affected. Therefore, the song in YouTube is a different issue. It's not affected. Only on TV and radio stations. So he also quoted by local media as saying private radio stations should censor the song themselves out of sensitivity to local culture. So awareness, be mindful as a media players are very, very critical. Okay, and now we move on to our last stage, right? In the third level, in post-production stage, we follow the initial recording of audio content. It involves refining and enhancing the recorded material, the recordings that we have recorded just now, your programming, to ensure that the final product meets the desired quality standards and effectively engages the audience. So in this stage, in radio programming, the final process after recording, the raw audio content is refined, edited, and prepared for broadcast or distribution. So it ensures that the program meets professional quality standards, adheres to the editorial guidelines, and also engaging for the target audience. It's not about changing the plannings anymore, but it's about adhering the guidelines. You have during the production, you have met the quality standards and engaging with the target audience. All right, delivering your productions. Okay, so the first one is handling sensitive information and vulnerable subjects. Okay, when editing stories about marginalized communities or sensitive issues, for instance, example, domestic abuse or mental health, ensure empathy in the narrative. So this could involve carefully choosing the language that we use to describe events and avoiding potentially harmful generalizations or stereotyping. It's crucial to prioritize the well-being of individuals involved and to avoid causing further distress, right? So we need to safeguard the vulnerable individuals involved in our program. Obscuring identities, we may need to blur, or maybe we may need to modify voices when airing interviews with whistleblowers or victims to protect their privacy and safety. And this is particularly important when dealing with cases of sexual assault, for instance, child abuse. You invite the victims, for instance, or other situations where revealing identities could lead to harassment and retaliations. And you may also need to do post-edit review. So maybe in collaborating with legal or editorial advisors to assess whether sensitive content can unintentionally cause harm or defamation. So for example, before airing a story about a controversial topics, it is important to consider whether the content could be interpreted or biased or inflammatory. So seeking guidance from legal or editorial professionals can help ensure that the content is presented responsibly and ethically. So refer to the legal advisors, or the corporate com may use this strategy. Corrections and accountability post-broadcast. Right? So after we protect our programs, then we do corrections and accountability. So post-edit disclaimer. So if critical information emerges after production, so we can insert disclaimers or footnotes to correct or clarify our content. Okay, for example, if a guest statement is later found to be factually inaccurate, a disclaimer can be added at the end of the program. So even though it's a live program, then you may need to post-edit and you insert the disclaimer for next scheduling. Another one is easy access to corrections. So provide on-air announcements or digital updates when post-production errors are identified after the initial broadcast. So this can include a brief correction during a later news bulletin, for instance, or a notice on the radio station's website. But we need to inform the listeners. So own the responsibility. Publicly acknowledge editing mistakes to maintain transparency and credibility with your audience. Radio announcer or program producers should explicitly apologize for any errors and explain the steps taken to prevent similar mistakes in the future. So this demonstrates accountability and strengthen trust with your listeners. But if you are handling the first two process carefully, then you may not to do this, inshallah. But somehow these are important steps need to be taken. That is corrections and accountability. Admit your mistakes or our mistakes. All right. Okay. Third one is managing listeners' feedback. Feedback reflections. Engage with listeners' feedback received through phone calls or emails or our social media comments. Use this feedback to inform future broadcasts, especially when addressing sensitive or controversial topics. For example, if a program discusses the ethics of reporting on a specific social issue, consider incorporating listener opinions on the issue in the next broadcast by providing a more nuanced perspective. And respect differing views. We do not censor or exclude dissenting opinions, but showcasing a range of viewpoints in subsequent programs demonstrates transparency and encourages open dialogue. All right. And for instance, if a program features an interview with a politician advocating for a certain policy, so ensure to follow up with an interview with a different political figure with a contrasting viewpoint so that we can have two different perspectives based on the listeners' feedbacks. For instance, maybe they need two perspectives. Engaging through edits. Insert reference to audience participation during previous shows, and this builds a sense of community and makes listeners feel like their voices are being heard. For example, during a program on environmental sustainability, mention the insightful comments received from listeners in a previous episode about sustainable practices. Maybe you requested your listeners to interact with you through phone calls, but somehow due to certain consequences, maybe in terms of timing, you got not enough time, but somehow you can bring the recordings forward so that the listeners have the trust on you because they have put the effort, all right, to interact with your program. So engagement through your editing. So you can edit the previous recordings and carry it into your next broadcasting. Okay?
That's it?
Yes.
We have passed the time.
Oh, okay. I'll try to expedite, yeah? Okay, we got a few more. Okay, 4 is multi-platform ethics for radio content. For cross-platform consistency, ethical promotion, as well as avoid misleading teasers. And lastly is fast checking and quality control, all right? Where we need to verify our information, our script and content reviewer, and make sure internal approvals. Yeah. Why is it important? Yes, because now we are also being challenged by AI, because we are now having our AI DJs. Yeah. So this is Aina, our Malaysia's first AI radio DJ in Fly FM. So ethics are very, very crucial. Not even human beings can violate our ethics of conduct. But somehow now we are challenged by AI, and we need more. Our responsibilities are getting bigger. All right. So the post-production and the whole process of production, basically in ethics in Islam, particularly in the context of dakwah, we are encouraging good and preventing evil by using the media platform. So the stages of radio programming, from planning to production to post-production, are integral to creating content that is not only engaging but also ethically sound. So adhering to principles of truthfulness, fairness, privacy, social responsibility, cultural sensitivity, and essential. All these are essential for maintaining the integrity of radio broadcasting. And by prioritizing these ethical considerations, radio programmers can contribute to media landscape that is informative, inclusive, and respectful of diverse audience. Okay, we will refer to Surah Fusilat verse 33. Okay, Alhamdulillah, thank you. That's all from me. All right.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
Okay.
I think there is many questions there,
Allah.
but because we have
Okay.
passed the time already, so
Okay.
maybe we
I'll
can
respond in the
only
chat box.
answer.
Allah.
Maybe we can answer one question, Doctor.
All right.
I think there is in the chat box. Doctor, can you check there?
Hold on.
Yeah.
Okay, which one? Reporting. Okay. Why reporting news from CNN, Reuters, and don't have our own official news among OIC, Middle East, we're just process entry unseen. Okay, talking about the because this is radio programming, compared to TV programming. But in broadcasting, it is very crucial for us to understand the ownership. The ownership of the station. So if it's owned by the government, then yes, we need to be biased. But most of the agenda is you need to rule by what is meant to us. Okay, so it depends on the ownership of the broadcasting station. We have impacts on radio station reputations, that is really caring to get things right. Sensitive to proper pronunciation. Yes, being sensitive to proper pronunciations of names, of course. Yeah. For instance, in Malaysia, we have India, Chinese, and Malay. But at the same time, we have also our Borneo friends. Yeah. So, for example, in terms of pronunciation, sometimes for Sarawakian or for Sabahan, so we might want to use people from Sabahan or Sarawakian as the DJ. And now they also have their own stations, because through their cultural diversity, they are more knowledgeable in terms of their culture, in terms of their pronunciations. Because sometimes there are certain pronunciations that we thought it was right for us to say or to pronounce. But to Sabahan or Sarawakian, no, it's not the proper terms to, or not the right way to pronounce certain terms. Okay, is that helps? So that is why we have several types of radio stations. We have government-owned, we have corporate-owned, we have also community stations to serve that specific community. Okay. All right. The rest, inshallah, I'll comment in the text box, inshallah, after this. Is that okay?
Yeah. Okay, Doctor. Thank you very much, Doctor. I'm sure that because this topic is very hot, there is many questions. Many questions. But because the time are so limited, we cannot give the participant to ask more questions.
Inshallah.
So inshallah, thank you, Doctor. We will meet you again in the next session, Doctor, inshallah.
All right, inshallah. Thank you for today. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much for interesting sharing today.
Thank you. Thanks to the organizer. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. So for next, inshallah, Dr. Ferdaus, are you here? Dr. Firdaus? Let me check a bit. Dr. Firdaus? Uh, Dr. Dr. Zarita?
Yes.
Because of the a little bit of technical problem. Doctor, can you stay for answer some of the question?
Hold on, yeah, because I I have hold on.
It's okay, doctor. If you have something for after this, it's okay.
Yeah, because somebody is waiting for me.
Okay. Thank you, doctor. It's okay for and thank you
All right, thank
because
you.
hmm, to all participants, we have a break 30 minutes. Inshallah, after this, we'll stick by three lectures, inshallah, because we have some technical problem. So we will come back at 10:30, inshallah. Thank you very much. Dr. Zarini?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Doctor, can you test the slide?
Okay, hold on. Can you see my slide? Can my slide be seen?
Yeah, already see, Doctor.
Okay,
But can you make it bigger?
bigger.
There is already big, but not full screen.
Okay, hold on. Okay, now?
Yeah. Yes, sure.
Alhamdulillah. Okay.
Okay, before we start, let me introduce a bit about Dr. Zarini, brief biodata a little bit. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wa bihi nasta'in wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmain. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Now we start we call it next session because we have already break, but after this inshallah we will have 3 lectures to for continuing inshallah. So for the first we will start from Assistant Professor Dr. Szariannie Sulaiman. Okay, let me introduce a bit. Dr. Szariannie Sulaiman is an assistant professor at the Department of Sociology and Anthropology, Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman, Kuliah of Islamic Real Knowledge and Human Science, International Islamic University Malaysia, known as IIUM. She specialized in medical sociology. She obtained her doctoral degree in sociology and anthropology from the International Islamic University Malaysia, specializing in medical sociology. She teaches undergraduate and postgraduate courses such as Introduction to Sociology, Research Method, Social Change and Development, Medical Anthropology and Issue in Social Change and Development. She's also touched Introduction to Sociology course for IKHS Usuluddin and comparative religion student at Pergas, Singapore. Her research include breast cancer airline experience, blood donation, and menstrual hygiene practice. Today, we will listen from her the topic ethics in sociology. The space for you, Dr. Falyatafaddal Ma'jura.
Yeah, thank you very much, moderator. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Participant of certificate program in integrations of knowledge for human sciences. Okay, I'm Dr. Szariannie binti Sulaiman from Department of Sociology and Anthropology. Okay, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Okay, let us praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this opportunity. Okay, to meet, actually more on sharing the knowledge on the topic that has been assigned to me. So my topic is on ethics in sociology. Okay, before I actually share the information or the content of this topic, I think it's very important for us to relate this topic with the previous lecture or with the previous topic, the research method. Okay, first is very important for us to refresh our understanding what sociology is. Okay, sociology is the scientific study of human society and social interaction. Okay, the term scientific study refers to the method used by sociologists to study the subject matter, focusing on human interaction as well as social interaction and human society. It's not about the method that they adopt to study the subject matter, the social interaction and human society, but we also have to look at how they conduct the research itself. This is where the ethics come in to help the researcher, not only the researcher in terms of protecting the rights of the researcher as well as the rights of the subject or participant of the study. Okay, so let's move on to the next next slide. Okay, which is we have, I think is also good if we try to refresh our understanding what ethic is. Okay, ethic come from Greek word ethos, which mean character or custom. Yeah. So ethics in Islam refers to akhlaq plural and or qulub is the singular. So ethical actions as ethic is the noun. Okay, we need to look at what are the practical aspect, what are the behavior or action related to ethics in Islam. So there are conducts which are characterized as amal soleh. So anything that we have the good intention that we do because of Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala, so it's referred as an ethical action. Yeah, amal soleh, good deeds. So in Quran, in the Arabic term, ethics are referred to haq, truth and right. So here we can see the element of good deeds, kibir, righteousness, taqwa, pious, ma'ruf, approve, khair, goodness, qis, equity, adil, equilibrium, and justice. So all these good deeds or amal soleh in Arab terms, also in Arabic terms, refer to ethics or the ethical action. Okay, so now we move on to the so the word khuluq, okay, is mentioned in Surah Al-Shu'ara ayat 137, which mean tradition, as well as in Surah Al-Qalam ayat number 4, mean a moral character. Okay, so something a good deed that is practiced by the previous generation and is also reflecting a good character. Okay, which is very important for all Muslims to practice. Okay. So Islamic ethics specifically, okay, is the framework of Islamic code of ethics is laid down by the central teaching of akhlaq, okay, concerning the character development. So we are emphasizing on human character development. So as a researcher, so we have to look at the character of a researcher, not only to achieve the objective of the study of his or her research, but they are being guided by the code of ethics, specifically the Islamic code of ethics. And number 2, we also have Aqidah, what they believe in, and Sharia, the law. So these are the 3 elements that build or become the foundation of the Islamic code of ethics, the akhlaq, Aqidah, and Sharia. So Islam magnifies the ultimate goal of akhlaq through the concept of observance of 2 elements. Okay, number 1, one's relationship with God or Allah, which is hablum min Allah, and number 2, one's relations with human beings or hablum minan nas. Okay, as I mentioned to you earlier, when we talk about Islamic ethics is to do amal soleh or good deeds. It is not about our good deeds with Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala, maintaining relationship with Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala, like performing ibadah. But we also have to observe good relation with our environment, number 1. Or number 2, with other human being, in which here we emphasizing on hablum minan nas, our relationship with other people. Okay, why? Because in research or in sociological research, we are dealing with human being as the subject of the study. So we are obtaining data, okay, from our informant, for example. So they are human being. They are providing an information or data that we need for our study. So therefore, there must be our relationship with our informant must be guided by certain principle, which we call it as sociological research ethics. Yeah? So Islamic code of ethics necessitated individual obligation. Okay? So it's an individual obligation as well as social responsibility, which is already reflected in the earlier point I mentioned just now. So individual relation or individual obligation, which is our obligation towards Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala, which is our accountability. And number 2, our social responsibility. We are responsible towards other people in the context of research, to our informants, to our participants, to our subject of the study, and they are being founded by the ethical practices. Okay, so the Islamic code of ethics warrants the observance of these 2 relationships to secure worldly success. Okay? Because we are in this world, we are dealing with human beings, we want to protect our environment and to ensure success in this world. Okay, al-falah fil al-dunya, along with the eternal success, al-falah fil akhirah. So this could be used, okay, as one of the conceptual framework in order for us to in order for the researcher to guide their research work. Okay, we have like Islamic code of ethics, Muslim researcher. So to observe the relationship with Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, okay, hablum minallah as well as hablum minan nas. And then this is where our understanding, okay, our akidah, our akhlaq is reflected in our practices. How do we actually practice to ensure that we observe these two elements, our hablum minallah as well as hablum minan nas? Okay, these are obtained from Kamri and Ramlan 2015. Okay, so let's move into the conceptual meanings of Islamic ethics. Akhlaq, here I refer to ethic, is also conceptualized as the sign or al-ilmu that deals with the standard of right or wrong of human conduct. It's very important what is right, what is wrong when it comes to human conduct or practices, or what humans ought to do, okay, what they are supposed to do. So this is what they are supposed to do, and this is what they are not supposed to do. So in the context of research, there are the do's and the don'ts. There is a standard. Standard here means that acceptable by members of the society, because in certain contexts, when we come to the cultural context, what is acceptable in a particular society, it might not be acceptable in the other society. Or when we talk about what is right in one particular society, it might not be perceived as rightful in the other society. So therefore, in order to avoid confusion, conflict, disagreement, so we must come up with a standard right or wrong, so that to ensure the process will be performed ataupun will be done smoothly. Yeah. So the study of the ethical conduct, so in terms of ethic as the sign, because the study of the ethical conduct and behavior, referring to the effort of studying moral standards and conduct to ensure that men possess the right understanding of moral behavior, the right understanding of moral behavior within the context, which is we go back to the standard of right and wrong. Because if we don't have the right understanding, we can mislead other people. Not only we have misunderstanding, but our misunderstanding can bring into misleading other people in terms of how do they conduct or perform certain practices. Number two, conceptually, akhlaq also refers to good character or good human behavior, as I already mentioned just now. Yeah. So the human character that prescribed to refrain from immoral conducts. So we know what is the boundary, what is the limit that we have. So if we know this is the good character, this is the standard of acceptable good character, so we know we should not go beyond the limit or within the limitation that we already mentioned earlier. Okay, so for example, as a Muslim, we should avoid immoral conduct, not only in terms of conducting research, but maybe in our daily life, we also should practice this good character with good intention to ensure not only we have good relation with Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala as the servant of Allah, but also good relation with other human being. Number one, do not cheat. Okay, in any means, so we do not cheat. We should tell the truth, although it might be it might not it might not favor other people, for example, or we do not discriminate other people in terms of, it could be like gender discrimination, or maybe we also have like racial discrimination and other forms of discrimination and inequality. So we do not steal others. Steal here does not necessarily stealing their material possessions, property, but we can also talk about stealing of data. For example, when we conduct research, our research should only collect data that we want to collect. So other than that, we should not collect, because it might also be considered as it is unethical, because it can be considered as stealing others people's data. That's why data are should be protected. And not only we avoid immoral conduct, at the same time, we also should enjoin virtues of honesty, compassion, sincerity, and other. And so it should, but the good should overweight the immoral conduct. So we should also highlighting, so this what we should observe, and at the same time, this is what we should practice. Therefore, so the universal standards of right and wrong that prescribed by humans, what humans ought to do as taught by the Quran. So Quran as the source of reference and demonstrated in the exemplary life, action, and words of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These are the two source of reference that we always refer to when we want to practice certain behavior. Okay, because number one, due to different background, different social cultural context, sometimes, as I mentioned earlier, we may have misunderstanding of others people's behavior. We thought that they are doing wrong, but actually in their own context, this is something acceptable. So we need also to look at social cultural context before we actually perceive other people's behavior. Okay, so now we move on to an overview, okay, about research ethic or sociological research ethic. So we refer generally, ethics refer to what is socially acceptable. And so in Islam, we have Islamic ethic, the code of conduct. But in sociological research, we also have the concept of sociological research ethic, which refers to what is socially acceptable. What is socially acceptable? Okay, socially acceptable here, we have to take into account the context where we are going to conduct the study. Yeah? So it deals primarily with the interaction between researcher and the people they study. And so now we are focusing on the relationship with human being, hablum minan nas. That is one of the important aspect. So not only observing the interaction between researcher and the people they study, the subject, participant, or the informant, the procedure also need to be emphasized for safeguarding research participant interest. Okay, as a researcher, we also have our intention, we also have our interest, but their participation in the study also must be also taken into account. Yeah, to engage with ethical dimension, a researcher should ask the following question before he or she embark with the research process. Okay, number one, question like what moral principle guide my research? Okay, when you have a topic that you want to study, so you have also to look at what are the moral principle that guide my research? What are the socially acceptable aspect that will guide my research, especially when you are studying informant or your sample in terms of their background are different from you. Okay, how do ethical issues influence my selection of a research problem? Because when we talk about selecting a research topic, there are several aspects that we have to look at. Says, for example, some of the topic might be sensitive topic. So there are several ethical issues that we have to deal with or we have to manage as a researcher. So how we are going to go about it? Okay, so it says, for example, you cannot just simply avoid the topic. So we still want to study the topic, but there are ways on how we are going to approach the topic. Number two. Number three, how do ethical issues affect the way I conduct my research? Okay, as a researcher, we are human being. We are also dealing with other human being as our subject. So how several ethical issues that we are already aware could affect the way you conduct your research or I conduct my research. Number four, what responsibility do I have toward my research subject? So as a researcher, again, what are your responsibility towards your research subject? Okay, your intention, your objective is to obtain the data or to collect the data. Okay, you cannot just focus on the data collection. Okay, your aim is to have answers for your research question, but you also have your responsibility towards your research subject, okay, which is go back to the principle maintaining relationship with other human being, good relationship. Ya hablum minan nas. And next, we also have what ethical issues or dilemma might come into play in deciding what research finding is published, findings I publish. Okay, when you obtain studies, so you have to also take into account the data, whether you can publish it or not, how you are going to address the audience of the research study, means that who is going to read your work. So how you are going to address some of the issues that might, some of the criticism, some of the issues that will go back to your research finding. Next, what will my research directly benefit those who participate in the study? So as I mentioned, so studies involve two researcher and the subject. So as a researcher, we get benefit from the study, and how our participant also will get benefit from the study. So this must be clearly addressed before we embark on our research process or project. Okay, now moving from that, by having ethical conduct, code of conduct, it helps to ensure researcher explicitly consider the needs and concerns of the people they are studying. I already mentioned just now, not about the researcher, but also the needs and concerns of the people they study. Because sometimes the researcher there are some controversial research where they overlook the needs and the concerns of the participant or the people they study. So these are considered as unethical. Okay, for the conduct of the research to take place, the basic of trust need to be established between researcher and study participant, establishing rapport. It's not simply that you want to get the data, but you have to approach your participant, your subject of the study in the most appropriate way or in the socially acceptable manner. Especially if you do not know them, definitely you do not know them. So you need to do some homework. Okay, what are among the issue, the do's, the don't, what are the cultural sensitivity or religious sensitivity. So please observe this because we want to establish trust. We want them to accept us as they are so that they allow us to be part of them. They will share information that we are looking for. So to ensure the smooth running of the research process. Okay, whenever research is conducted on people, the well-being of research participant must be the top priority. So the well-being of the research participant must be the top priority. Although we are being funded, so we receive grant, but that is not only the priority, but the top priority goes to the research participant. Okay, we have this ethic, as I already emphasized earlier, not only to safeguard the rights of the researcher, but also the research participant. Because participation in the study is voluntary. We cannot force them to participate in our study. They have to voluntarily participate in the study. So before you get that voluntary participation, so you have to approach them nicely or in the socially acceptable way. So then only the research question or your research questions are always of secondary importance. So these are some of the basic guideline or elements that we have to look into before embark on the research process. Okay, moving from that, so there are several research ethic principles. Okay, number one, respect for person. So how a researcher can respect the person, or here referred to the subject participants of the study. It requires a commitment to ensure the autonomy of research participant. Number one, commitment of the researcher. Okay, to commit in terms of, I already highlighted, where you have to do some homework to know the background of the research participant, to ensure that you know how to approach them, and to give the autonomy to the research participant where the autonomy may be diminished to protect people from exploitations of their vulnerability. Okay, some of the research participants are vulnerable. We should not be exploiting them just because you want to get the data. So we have to respect their person. They have their rights as well as research participant. So as a researcher, so he or she have to adhere to this principle, ensuring that people will not be used simply as a mean to achieve research objective. And so we should not take advantage on our research participant just as a mean to achieve our objective. So this is not ethical, and we call it as very unethical. Beneficial number two, requires commitment of the researcher to minimizing the risk. The risk is always there or are always there, but as a researcher, how can you minimize the risk, for example? So need to commit in that aspect, do study, learn from previous study, for example, associate with the research. So this risk associate with the research. Maybe, for example, in your research, so these are the issues. So in the other research, so these are the ethical issues. So we can learn from other or previous researchers, how do they conduct their study and how do they actually deal with the ethical issues. So what are among the ethical principles that they observe before they manage the issue? Okay, these are among the risks include psychological and social risks. Okay, for example, we want to ensure participants, when they participate in the study, they also have to leave the study in the same condition before they participate in the study. So we do not want participants, when they participate in the study or after we interview them, so because of the research question that we ask, it could trigger them psychologically. So this should not happen, for example. Or number two, put them in harm, like legal consequences, or maybe other risks that we can discuss later. Okay, and maximizing the benefit that accrue to research participant, researcher must articulate specific ways this will be achieved. Next, we have several ethical issues in research. Okay, I just want to share you some of the example that we have. Research involving human subjects, especially in psychology, in sociology, we are dealing with human society. We are observing human interaction, okay, not only how we interact with other human beings, but we also have to look at how we deal with several issues. Okay, must follow certain ethical standard to make sure the participants are not harmed. Yeah, so harm here, the risk, okay, that potential risk that we can anticipate before the study will be carried out. Okay, we have the example, the Tuskegee experiment. Okay, so I think this is one of the controversial research where several ethical issue were not properly observed. Okay, let's look at what the Tuskegee experiment is. Okay, so this is basically the summary of the study. Yeah? So the project or the research was conducted by U.S. Public Health Service (PHS) from 1932 to 1972. So this is the duration of the study. With the intention to examine natural cause of untreated syphilis. So this is the health issue faced by the community in America among the African men during that time. Yeah? So they want to know what caused the natural cause of untreated syphilis. So what they wanted to do was to test whether syphilis caused cardiovascular damage more often than neurological damage. So they want to see whether suffering or individuals suffering from syphilis, okay, what are the consequences? Number one, cardiovascular or neurological damage, and number two, to determine if the natural cause of syphilis in black men was significantly different from what in white. So they want to compare between black, which is the African American, as well as the white. So this study has recruited 399 infected patients. So they have two groups, okay, the control group and the experimental group. So 399 infected patients and 201 uninfected control patients were recruited for the program. So the subjects, in terms of their background, were all impoverished sharecroppers from Macun country. The original study was scheduled to last only 6 to 9 months. So this is the plan of the study in terms of duration, research duration, 6 to 9 months, which is less than a year. So, but it was later prolonged in 1932 until 1972 due to some other issues. So we can see that these are quite unethical, number one. So several issues already there are, several ethical issues. Okay, the subject who these 399 and 201 patients were not told that they had syphilis. So the infected patients, they actually do not know they have syphilis, or that the disease could be transmitted through sexual intercourse, and they are actually unaware about their health condition. Okay, number one, they do not know they have syphilis, and number two, if they have syphilis, they actually don't have this background knowledge that their suffering could actually, the disease that they suffer from could be transmitted through sexual intercourse, means that they can also affect their wife. So instead of telling the truth to the participant, or they were told by the researcher that they are actually suffered from bad blood. So this is what they were told. Instead of telling the truth, so they were told that, oh, you are only suffering from bad blood, that's why we want to invite you to participate in the study, something like that. So bad blood was actually a local term used to refer to a range of illness. So why they use bad blood? Because bad blood is socially acceptable term in the context of the study. So if they don't if they do not use the local term, so they may afraid participant or these 399 or 201 may not want to participate in the study. So because they need people to achieve the objective of the study. Yeah. So by using the term bad blood, so they can recruit sample from the population of the study, which is the African American. So, but after the so treatment was initially part of the study. Okay, so they are going to be treated because this the plan of the study. Yeah? And some patients were administered arsenic, bismuth, and mercury, so as the treatment. But after the original study failed to produce a useful data, so after conducting the study, they found out that they couldn't get the useful data. They obtained the data, but this is not the data that they want. So it was decided to follow the subject until their death. It's supposed to be terminated after 9 months, okay? Because originally it was scheduled 6 to 9 months, but after maybe like 9 months, approaching the end of the study, they found out that the data they obtained was useless. So they decided to proceed or to continue the study without informing the participant, perhaps. Okay, so the study decided to follow the subject until their death. Okay, who this subject? Those who were infected with syphilis, the 399. Some of them died throughout the study, and all treatment was halted. So they received the treatment, but later it was halted, and penicillin was denied. So penicillin was available during that time, but they was denied. Why they were denied the right? Okay, now we are actually putting the subject into harm. We are not protecting the subject, or the researchers are not protecting the subject. Penicillin was available, but they were not being treated with penicillin, especially among the infected men after the drug was available in the mid 1940s. Yes, the 1940s, because the study started 1932. So I mean, after a few years of the conducting the study, so penicillin available, but they were not treated with penicillin. They just the study go as it is, because they want to get the data. Previously, what they obtained was useful data. The data was not useful, sorry, and it was still being held from them 25 years later. Imagine, So in direct violations of government legislation that mandated treatment of venereal disease, it is estimated that more than 100 of the subject died of tertiary syphilis. So here we have participant, but as a result, it creates harmful situation. So rights of the participant in terms of respect, beneficial, minimizing the risk are not being observed. So there are several ethical issues in this particular research. Okay, then we also have another issue. Researcher must protect confidential information. I said to you, the data also must be protected. And how we use the data provided by the participant, even this information is not considered to be privileged, legally protected. So some of the information might be against some of the legal rule, legally protected, as in the case between doctor and patient, between attorney and client, and legal pressure is applied to reveal this information. Okay, we have an example of study, Brajuha and Hollowell, 1986, in his study, Legal Intrusion and the Politics of Fieldwork, the Impact of Brajuha Case. So what was the study about? A graduate student named Mario Brajuha had been doing participant observation. So he was observing participant as a restaurant waiter on Long Island, New York, when the restaurant burned down. So he was in the restaurant working as a waiter. So when the police suspected arson, so he also conducted the study, observing. That's why he was there. So when the police suspected arson, asked Brajuha to turn over his field note. And so why he has the field note? Because he was doing observation during his work as the restaurant waiter. So when Brajuha refused, he do not want to give the note. He know that he has to protect the rights of the participant. He was treated with imprisonment. He was asked because maybe the field note contained the information that was where the police looking for. So he was treated with imprisonment. So meanwhile, two suspects in the case also demand for his note. So now he has two party demanding for his field note. One is police and another two suspects. For their legal defense, but again, Brajuha refused. So neither nor given to the policeman as well as the suspect. So the controversy ended 2 years later when the suspect died. During the trial, the suspect died and the prosecutor office abandoned its effort to obtain the notes. So this was putting the researcher under pressure. And the researcher also is observing several ethical issues to protect the rights of the participant. Okay, so the researcher also must acknowledge not only that, we also have to look into research collaboration, acknowledgement of research collaboration and assistance they receive from others. What are the assistance? And disclose all sources of financial support. Other ethical issues like receiving consent from the participant means that they actually want to participate in the study. In addition to voluntary participation, we also have to look at informed consent. They are being informed about the study and they give consent to participate in the study. Now, before a research can begin, a researcher can begin obtaining the data. The subjects of the research must normally sign an informed consent form From this form summarizes the aims of the study. So they are in the know what the study is all about and the possible risk of being the subject. So they are being informed before they actually participate. That's why we have the term informed, and then they give consent. They want to participate in the study. Okay, so this is example that I want to share with you from an article published in a journal. Okay, normally they will some of the journal article will require the author to disclose the information. Okay, for example, here we have consent for publication. Okay, the people interviewed were informed about the study's objective. Okay, informed, and the eventual publications of the information gathered. So participants were not only informed about the objective of the study, but they were also informed that data from the study will also be published. So in this article, eventual publication of the information gathered, and they were assured that the informant identities would remain undisclosed or anonymous. Okay, and then ethical approval must also be obtained and consent to participate. So two, ethical approval. So all the procedures of the research has been approved by the committee, and then consent to participate in the study. As the author were granted permission. So not only to, the author not only proposed this is the research that he or she wants to study or to conduct, but obtain permission from the committee, ethics committee, to proceed with the study. So for example, I mentioned here National Commission for Science, Technology and Innovation in Kenya, local authorities and the people interviewed to carry out the research for study. This is as per the ethical consideration of research and the Kenyan government research policy. So this they have already they observed. Okay, so then in the publisher note, they also acknowledge the funding. So who fund the research? Is talk about the financial support by a sustainable approach to livelihood improvement project. This is a joint collaboration project of Mohd University Kenya, Southeastern Kenya University, and a university from Amsterdam that is being implemented in Kenya. So this financial support proved fundamental to the design of the study, the collection and analysis of the data, and the writing of the manuscript. So how the fund or the research grant are being utilized. Okay, so this is on the issue. Then we also have how are research subjects protected. Okay, and number one, we also have a code of ethics, basic standards that sociology must follow in conducting research. Okay, we have American Sociological Association must endeavor maintain objectivity and integrity. So maintaining good relationship with other human beings, so we have to be objective, and integrity in their research by disclosing the research info, including all possible interpretations of the data. So they have to know basically what is going on. Even those interpretations that do not support their own point of view. Like what we have in the Tuskegee experiment. So the data does not what they want. So but here, if something that we receive or the data that we obtain is not as what we want, we should not manipulate the data. So we have to present as is. The researcher must safeguard the participant right to privacy. So they have the privacy, dignity while protecting them from harm. Not only protect them from all the possible harm, but we also have to protect their rights to privacy, anonymity, do not disclose their information. Researcher must protect confidential information provided by participant, like what in the case of Rajuha, even when this information is not considered to be privileged. Collaboration, I mentioned already. And then we also have potential ethical decision-making issues and dilemmas. So as student, so maybe we also have several dilemma, or student have several dilemma. How, as the supervisor or as a lecturer, a researcher, how do we help the student to deal with some of the issue? For example, ethical issues students, researchers confront. These are common issue or among the most common issue confronted by the student researcher. For example, students begin a research project as a mean of exploring or solving topic. They want to explore the topic or they want to solve topic that they are personally concerned. Means that they are being influenced by several personal factors. Supposedly, you have to be objective. So here are some personal aspect in which research should be very objective to the objectivity to be objective. Concern about which use of research as a therapeutic action, means that we are taking advantage on the research itself. could influence the outcome of the research. So where we have personal, where we deal or approach the research in more personal way ataupun are not being objective, that it can influence the outcome of the research. We cannot be transparent, or maybe we are being biased in terms of doing analysis or reporting the finding of the study, as well as involvement of the students and of the research. Okay, so student strategy. So what are among the strategy that can be used by students for empowering ethical decision making? So we have to make decision. Okay, student might first attempt a small pilot study to judge how they will react to the larger research prospect. So instead of approaching the subject, conducting the real research, why not start small by conducting small pilot study? So means that we try first, approach the subject ataupun the participant, and we see how we actually deal with the situation. Can we cope with all the ethical issue that we already take into account before participate in the study? Okay, ethical issues, faculty supervisor conference. Okay, faculty advisor need to gauge student level of engagement. So they need to understand to what extent the student engage with the subject, or attachment to the topic. So how attached the student researcher to the topic, because it initially started with the personal issue. So how attached, the level of engagement, and number two, attachment with the topic. If they are too attached, so they might be dragged away from the objectivity, might as well advise them not to continue with the topic. So, and locate possible problem issues. Faculty strategy for empowering ethical student decision making. So what are the role that we can do as a faculty members? Faculty advisor should have an extended conversation. So maybe some discussion with the student prior to the beginning of the research, as an experience or with the experience that the researcher or faculty have. So he or she can call the student, discuss, and give some examples so that they are aware, or maybe they are not aware. That's why they are proposing the topic. So because they don't have experience, so as a researcher that have certain kind of experience, we may advise or give suggestion. Check out with them throughout the project duration. Supervisor check out from time to time whether they are doing it right or not. So we have to start it right from the beginning, because it's very difficult to undo it later. Faculty advisor should be able to advise students if the project does not appear to be working. So if it doesn't work as what they want, advise what we are supposed to do. So we should anticipate this happen, and we are ready with some of the practical solution. Not only solution, but what are among the practical solution that we can advise for students by observing the code of ethics. Okay, then number two issue, sample issue. Student approve sample collections and interviewing without a good background of safety precaution in research. So they have a good sample, but in terms of how they approach the sample, observing their right as a researcher as well as rights of the participant also need to be observed. So now what should be done? Student must remain aware of personal safety in research. Not about enthusiastic to get the data, too excited to get the data, too excited to interview. So until we forgot about our own safety as a researcher. And harm is not only for the research participant, but for the researcher as well, so that we might not be subject to any legal consequences as well. There is careful about what research subject they choose and where they are interviewed. So research location, premise are also important. Faculty advisor need to provide with student with an overview of safety practices. So there are lots of issues out there. So these are the things that you need to observe, not only to protect your right as a researcher, but the right of the participant. Faculty advisors and students should also discuss safety in supervisory meeting. From time to time, always check with the student in terms of how they deal with informants, as well as how do they meet them, where they actually conduct the study, in terms of observing the issues of safety. Faculty advisors should encourage students to check in before and after they go out on the interview assignment. So you are aware that students is going to conduct an interview, where they are going to conduct the interview. So you know they check in and check out. Always check on them. And then students seek to use family and friends. We also have issues using acquaintances like families, friends for research purposes, and run into issues of confidentiality. This is quite common. Sometimes have problem, or researcher have problem with when to approach the subject. They do not know who to be included in the study, or they don't have a good contact with other people. They do not know how to actually do the selections of samples. So take a very easy step by approaching family members and friends. So our issue that we need to observe is confidentiality. So students should consider whether they will be able to honor ethical rules governing confidentiality. So how we want to observe with the issues of confidentiality, because we are actually exposing some data of our family member or maybe our friends. How do we keep the information as confidential? And number two, we also want to protect them. So in terms of anonymity, we are not observing because we know the subject already. They are our friends and they are our family members. Even we may unconsciously share the information towards others. So this is also violating the rights and respect towards our research participant. Students should also gauge their own level of ability to conduct private research. And so student also should ask himself or herself, to what level you are able to conduct private research. You keep the information to yourself. You should understand yourself as well. Because at the end of the day, we are doing good deeds. Number one, we also want to maintain our good relationship with other human beings. Hamdu minallah as well as hamdu minannas. Faculty advisors need to inform students of confidentiality and privacy guidelines. And if they are not in the know, they are not aware, they do not have good background knowledge about privacy and confidentiality. So as a faculty members, as a supervisor, so the person must advise, always give advice. So this is how we actually create an awareness as well as disseminate knowledge about ethical issue. So faculty advisors and students need to have a meeting about ethical guideline, both university and IRB guideline. Sometimes guidelines might differ from the university guideline. Issues are similar. When I talk about differences here, issues in terms of research code of conduct are similar. Maybe there are some additional information that we need to observe and IRB guideline. Faculty advisors should also advise students if they think the student will be unable to follow through with this ethical guideline. Sometimes we know that students have their own character, because akhlak, the word character here. So we know that these are students' character. So maybe they might not be able to observe this ethical conduct. We should advise them. These are things that you are going to face. Are you able to deal with the situation? If you don't have that, might as well before we collect the data, we still have time to amend some of the procedure, some of the strategies that we think that appropriate or socially acceptable. There are several other aspects that we have to look at. I think that's all from me. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for your great sharing today. Doctor, we have open one or two Q&A for you. All the participants, if you have any question, you can raise your hand or you can write in the chat box.
Okay, yes, we have question.
From Nawawi, the question IRB. What is IRB, Doctor?
Research board. The institutional research board means that the ethical research board means that there is a organization that deal with this ethical application and provide approval. Institutional research board.
Okay, the all participants, if you have question, please raise up your hand. Okay, I think there is no question, Doctor.
Alhamdulillah. Okay.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for your great sharing today. Inshallah, see you next time.
Okay.
Inshallah. Thank you very much.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh.
They just give the question, Doctor.
Oh yes. Do I need? What is the question?
How I wish to make this slide. Oh no. I saw like question. Inshallah, the slide we will give in the groups.
Okay.
Inshallah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Dr. Zacky, are you here? Let me check. Doctor, can you raise up your hand, Doctor? Raise your hand. I can't find your name, Doctor, but if you raise up your hand, make easy for me. Okay, Doctor, I'm already make you become co-host.
Okay, now am I audible?
Yeah. Okay, for today, inshallah, we will continue to listen from Dr. Zacky. Doctor, as usual, we have 45 minutes. The space for you. فليتفضل مأجورة, Doctor.
Okay. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala Rasulil Kareem. Amma ba'd. Thank you very much, Sister MC, for the introduction. And so we have been discussing political science for the last 3 weeks. I think in the last 3 weeks we covered quite a lot of aspects. We introduction to political science and also Islamic perspective of political science. And in the last week we discussed about Islamic political ethics or political ethics in Quran and Sunnah. Today we are going to reflect, today and next week actually, we are going to reflect more on classical political theory. In that today we are going to discuss classical Islamic political theory, and the next week will be we will discuss Western classical political theory. So to understand classical Islamic political theory, I just choose two important scholars who represent two different variants within Islamic classical political theory. One is Al-Mawardi and Al-Farabi. So we are going to reflect both of these scholars and thinkers in the Islamic past to understand how Islamic history manifested different kind of political understanding and political philosophies. And right, so this is my content. So initially I will I will discuss a bit about epistemology, ethics, and political philosophy, and the link between actually the political philosophy and ethics and epistemology. That is what I am going to focus on initially. Then I will discuss epistemology and ethical debates in classical Islam. I will try to give a framework to understand this ethical and epistemological debate in classical Islam. Then I will discuss Al-Mawardi and the basics of Sunni political theory. As you know, that Imam Al-Mawardi is one of the leading thinkers who actually laid the foundations or elaborated the foundations of Sunni political theory as we identify today. And so he is one of the leading authorities in Sunni political theology. So we are going to reflect on his major ideas. The second, Al-Farabi, and here I will discuss the essentials of rationalist political theory in Islam. So Islamic tradition actually produced two distinct types of political theories. One is rationalist, one has rationalist foundation, another one has revelation-based political philosophy. So we are going to reflect both in this presentation, and finally I will give a few concluding remarks. So in order to understand Farabi and Mawardi and all the debates that happen in classical Islam, initially we need to understand the landscape or the link between political philosophy and ethics and epistemology. As it is captured in this diagram, I have put here political philosophy as applied ethics, meaning to say political philosophy is always deals with, or at least political philosophy talks about political institutions and how the authority should be, or at least what are the legitimate sources of authority, and what are the major tasks of authority, political authority, and how should political institutions act and interact with the citizens. These are the major questions that political philosophy try to address. In this sense, we can easily say no any political institution or political concept can be considered value neutral, meaning to say whether you know, across the world we see many kind of political concept, many different kind of political institutions. All those political institutions and concepts are originally emerged from a certain value background, meaning to say based on certain ethical premises. All political institutions reflect certain world view. So there is an embedded link or strong connection between political philosophy and worldview and ethics. So to elaborate more on this subject, mainly the political philosophy, let's take an example. The political philosophy mainly discuss about political institutions and the power that those institutions have and how that power needs to be applied. These are the major concerns of political philosophy. So in order to determine that, mainly we need to, all political philosophies or all kind of political concepts, how do they respond to those questions? They actually coming based on particular ethical principles. And where those ethical principles are emerging? From a particular worldview. So worldview means it's worldview. How do we derive those worldviews? From a particular epistemological source. So let's assume that Islamic political philosophy, we actually talk about caliphate and all those Islamic states or Islamic political models. Those political models are actually applied through those political models. What we're trying to do is to apply Islamic ethics. So Islamic ethics is, we consider Islamic law is a primary source of ethics, primary manifestation of ethics. From where those ethics are coming from, we derive Islamic ethics from a particular source of law, particular epistemological source, which we call Quran, Sunnah, and reason. So you see here the link between epistemology, ethics, and political philosophy. We initially develop our worldview, then we develop our system of ethics, and then we develop political institutions to apply those ethics and to model those ethics, model the people and shape the people's or shape the citizens of a country based on those ethics. This is how not only Islamic political philosophy works, all kind of political philosophy works in this direction. For example, if there is a liberal political philosophy, meaning to say liberal political philosophy is rooted in liberal ethics, and liberal ethics is rooted in a particular conception of worldview, which they derive from a particular epistemological source, which is abstract reason. So is similar kind, you need the political, for Buddhist political philosophy. If, for example, from where that political philosophy emerges in the first place, that emerges from the Buddhist ethics, because Buddhist politics is to just apply Buddhist ethics in the society. Where Buddhist ethics comes from particular source of epistemology, which is very particular to the Buddhist philosophy. So this is how the political philosophy works. Political philosophy has an intimate link with ethics and epistemology. To put it more simply, political philosophy or political science is simply an applied version of ethics. applied version of worldview. So this is a theoretical framework that I am going to discuss and reflect on. So in order to understand Islamic political philosophy, we need to know. In order to understand different strands of political philosophy, Islamic political philosophy, we need to understand Islamic ethical framework and also Islamic epistemological framework. So this is very much interconnected. So now I am trying to give you an overview about the Islamic epistemological and ethical debates. In Islamic history, you could see that we have four schools of thought when it comes to the epistemology and ethics. For example, the dominant one is Asharism. Ashari or Maturidi, both we can use. Mainly I take it Ashari for granted because Ash'ari is one of the dominant schools of epistemology and ethics in Islamic history. So major Islamic scholars represented actually the Ash'arism, Ash'ari paradigm, Imam al-Mawardi that we are going to discuss today, Imam al-Ghazali and Imam al-Juwayni. These greats of Islamic history actually represent the paradigm of Ash'ari school of thought. What is the epistemological and ethical domain that Ash'arism represented? Which I named here revelation-centric ethics. Meaning to say, revelation is the main source of ethics. Main source of ethics mean from where you derive your ethics, it is from revelation. So revelation is the foundational text to understand ethics. So in that sense, do they reject or did they reject reason? No. They incorporate reason, but the understanding of reason is what we call dependent reason, meaning to say it is not an independent reason. Rather, we can use reason, but in light of revelation. So revelation needs to be, revelation has the power to supersede reason in Ash'ari theoretical framework. So this we call revelation-centric ethics, which doesn't mean they reject reason, rather they accept reason within the fold of revelation. The second important school of thought in Islamic ethical and epistemological debate is Mu'tazila. We Islamic scholars identify Mu'tazila as a reason-centric ethics, meaning to say Mu'tazila, in Mu'tazilian perspective, reason is the key and important epistemological principle. And reason in Mu'tazilian understanding, if we want to derive ethical principles, that we need to give priority to rational ideas in terms of drawing those ethics. So it's not revelation, rather reason should be given the priority in developing Islamic ethics. This is right opposite to the idea or stance that Ash'arism took. So here I put in the brackets independent reason. Reason has an independent authority to judge and to derive and to develop ethics. Do they reject revelation? No. They accept revelation, but within the fold of reason. They say that revelation actually supports reason, and reason and revelation both they argue that though both complement each other, we should always give reason priority. So reason has an independent authority, but revelation doesn't have an independent authority in Mu'tazilian paradigm. Rather, revelation needs to operate always under the supervision of reason. This is the Mu'tazilian paradigm. And so even if we want to develop ethics and principles and foundations for our life and to manage, regulate our society, we need to give priority to reason. This is Mu'tazilian argument. So we have another kind of scholars tradition which we call philosophers. They also actually promote reason, meaning to say they also promote reason-centric ethics. But unlike Mu'tazila, they actually give reason a super priority, we can say. And they always try to argue that reason is the supreme source of law and supreme source of ethics, and revelation is just just for the general public, meaning to say it's not that much important. But the most important source is reason, meaning it's a logical reason. This is according to philosophers. Al-Farabi, Ibn Sina, Al-Kindi represented this kind of tradition. We have a fourth category of scholars, which are Sufis. So for example, Ibn Arabi, here they argue spiritually centered ethics, meaning to say the right, where do you get from where you get the knowledge or learn the knowledge of goodness from bad, right from wrong, and all the ethical principles. For Sufis like Ibn Arabi, from your spiritual empowerment. Once you empower your spirituality, once you experience higher level of spirituality, which allow certain kind of people to discover hidden knowledge which they get from the God, and among those knowledge is the highest ethical principles. So for some Sufis, spirituality also a source of knowledge and also a source of ethics. So we have these four different kind of epistemological and ethical schools in classical Islam. Among those, I actually selected Ash'ari and philosophers to compare each other in terms of their approach to political philosophy. And Al-Mawardi and the basics of classical political theory. Now you know that Mawardi is an Ash'ari theologian, so he represented a revelation-centric ethical. He actually embraced revelation-centric ethical principle. So in his political philosophy, he actually applied this understanding, and he tried to develop a revelation-based political theory, at least, or try to justify his political model based on revelation. So it became a mainstream Sunni political theology or theory in the classical Islam. So you see, this is the Mawardi's famous work, The Ordinances of the Government, Ahkamus Sultaniya. Ahkamus Sultaniya wal Wilayat ad-Diniya al-Mawardi. And he born in Basra, and he's a famous Shafi jurist and also one of the elite political advisors to the Abbasids. And he is even the chief ambassador in his time, and also chief justice and ambassador in his time, and also statesman, meaning to say he was an insider to the political elites. And in his time there was a conflict between the caliph and also between the sultan. Sultan actually held the real power in Abbasid Caliphate. The caliph was just for namesake. He didn't have the authority. He was totally marginalized. So this created a power struggle between this office of caliph and the sultan. Sultan had the real power over the territories, and caliph has the power of religion because his office represented the continuity of the earliest caliphate. So both have their own source of legitimacies. This created a conflict. For the first time through this book, Imam al-Mawardi, The Ordinances of the Government, he tried to reconcile this power struggle. For that matter, this book is a very, very vital to the history of Islamic political thought. And this is the background of his political context, and this is the background where he wrote this. Against that, he wrote this book. And in this book, he explicitly provides a detailed overview about the political philosophy or political theory which came to dominate the majority of the Islamic world, major parts of the Islamic world after him. And what are the major ideas that he developed in his book? He actually clearly for the first time outlined that realization of a caliphate is a revelation based obligation upon the Muslim community. So caliphate as an institution came into being because of the demand of revelation. Revelation demanded and in a construction of a office of caliph. So he argued through this, through highlighting this point, though the sultans are powerful, sultans cannot extend their power to even to deconstruct the office of caliph. Sultans, that yes, they can have the power, but they don't have the right to challenge the office of the caliph. Why? The caliphate is a revelation. The caliphate was initially built upon a demand which actually came from revelation. So it's a revelation linked institution. This is a strong argument that which actually protected the office of the caliph across the Islamic history or across centuries. Though the caliphate saw many political upheavals, it was protected because of his emphasis and stress on the caliphate and the institution of the caliphate in his book. And what are the revelation-based obligation? Where the revelation actually says about the caliphate, he actually brought many Quranic verses about the leadership, importance of leadership, importance of the importance of the good governance from the Quran, and justified the importance of the office of the caliphate. And also he, for the first time, he used ijma as a source of law and the consensus of Sahaba as the sources of that obligation, because earlier Sahabas was unanimously agreed that the caliphate, the office of caliphate, is the construction of the office of the caliphate is a one fundamental right of the or fundamental obligation of the Muslim community. So Quran and Ijma, according to Mawardi, are the two important sources of that obligation. So then if there is a caliph, and what is the role of the caliph actually? Mawardi says the protection of the Islamic law is the fundamental task of the Islamic ruler. He is the one first clearly outlined this duty in his book. And also he argued that in order to protect the Islamic law and in order to safeguard and apply Islamic law, he said ruler needs to be an Islamic jurist, because if the ruler is not an Islamic jurist, and he will not be sensitive towards Islamic law. So he argued that ruler also needs to be a perfect Islamic jurist. But this doesn't mean that only particular class of jurists can become rulers, like what we see in Shia tradition. Particular imams were designated as the leaders of their community. This is not the case in Sunni political theory. Mawardi says anyone can be a political leader, need not to be a person with supreme knowledge of ethics or ethics opposed to the Shias and Khawarijis, because Khawarijis and Shias are argued that there are particular class of jurists, they are only entitled to rule the community. But though Islamic jurist is the perfect leader that Islamic community needs to appoint, we may not sometimes find such a perfect jurist, and most of the political leaders are ignorant of Islamic laws. In a such condition, Mawardi says anyone can become the political leader, but there should be at least the Islamic jurist needs to be appointed to advise that leader who has no knowledge over the Islamic law. So there is a flexibility within Sunni political theory, but you don't see this flexibility within Shia or Hawariji political tradition, because the political leader needs to be perfect and need to be a high authority in Islamic jurisprudence. But Mawardi tells, yes, that is the condition, but if you don't find such a person, anyone can become a political leader, but a jurist needs to be appointed as a advisor. And so, and again he says political leader, political obligation should be based on the contract between the ruler and the ruled. So there is no authoritarianism in Sunni political theory, and there is no support for dictatorship in Sunni political theory. Sunni political theory, as it is elaborated by Mawardi, clearly says political leadership is coming to being, or political leadership in the first place coming to being based on a contract between the ruler and the ruled. Ruler needs to represent the hope and will and aspirations of the ruled, meaning to say he doesn't get his power from divine sources, rather he gets his power from the people. So people appointed him or a political leader based on a certain conditions, that he need to protect Islam and applying Islam and should stand for the interest of the Muslims. So these are the conditions. So if political leader violates such conditions, then he will lose the legitimacy. So the people ruled or the citizens have the right to replace him. So this is the framework that Mawardi developed in his book, and this actually these are the ideals, but the reality is something different. But despite that, Mawardi continue to stress the ideals, continue to emphasize the ideals. This is very important. Yes, in the Mawardi's period, Sultan, he doesn't have any people's support on, but still Mawardi stressed that political obligation needs to be based on contract. So this is a very revolutionary step taken by Mawardi at the time. And now I am moving to the Al-Farabi. Al-Farabi's political ideals. Farabi is another important political philosopher in the Islamic history. And who is Al-Farabi? He born in 870 and died in 950. He is from Fayrab actually, which is a place located in Afghanistan. And Afghanistan is now, though it's an independent country, but in the Islamic history, it is a part of larger Khorasan province. And Farabi is known as the founder of Islamic philosophy. And he actually brilliantly reconciled Islamic principles as he understood with the Aristotelian legacy. So actually, even after Aristotle, the Farabi is considered, even after Aristotle, he is the second most important figure to the history of philosophy. That's why so many scholars, even from the Western world, consider Farabi as the second master. The first master is Aristotle. The second master is Farabi. To that extent, actually, Farabi was excelled in reading and understanding and in writing commentaries to the early Greek literatures. And obviously, he was influenced by Plato and Aristotle. And interestingly, when it comes to the political philosophy, Farabi was more or less influenced by Plato rather than Aristotle. Some people argue why that happened. Actually, some people try to answer this question, why he actually, when it comes to the political philosophy, embraced Plato rather than Aristotle. The response is that some scholars highlight historically he might have not received the Aristotle's brilliant work of politics, so he couldn't actually develop a more balanced political theory combining both Plato and Aristotle. But unfortunately, since he didn't get the Aristotle's work related to politics, he relied only on Plato. So anyhow, the Plato's influence is very much visible in Farabi's political theory. And so one of his major works is that I showed here the picture. This is one of the major works of Farabi, where he discusses elaboratively about politics on perfect state. And this is a translation, Mabadi'ul Ara'u Ahlil Madinatil Fadila. This is one of the greatest works ever written on political philosophy. And Farabi's political philosophy has different distinct features. So one is, according to Farabi, philosophy is the knowledge of the ultimate truth. So philosophy is the real knowledge. Real knowledge can be attained through philosophizing. And so rational, what is philosophy means then? It's a rational deliberation. So through rational deliberation only you can reach the ultimate truth. This is the Farabi's framework. And so how in Farabi says that not everyone can actually achieve the status of a philosopher. It is a characteristics of a few. Actually, only few are blessed with such kind of mind, such kind of rational intellect. So philosophers and those who are close to philosophers only know the real truth, because they are the only people who actually have the access to those rational faculties and rational power. And so those who don't have such kind of rational power to deliberate and demonstrate the real truth, ultimate truth through reason, those who don't have such access are the popular mass. The 90% of the population doesn't have access to such kind of rational mind. Only philosophers have. So philosophers can achieve and realize or know the ultimate truth through reasoning capacity. For the general public, what do they do? According to the framework of Farabi, it's religion. Religion is a symbolic representation of philosophy. Philosophy is the real knowledge which is only appealing to the great minds, and most of the people who doesn't have such kind of mind, for them is the religion. So religion is a micro version of the philosophy, according to Farabi. So philosophy is a universal, religion is applicable to one group of people, meaning to say it's for general public. Religion is for general public, philosophy and rational deliberation is for people with high minds or exceptional philosophical minds. And so here you see the Farabi actually subordinate the religion to the philosophy, ranking philosophy as the highest source of knowledge, and religion is just second to that. Though he said both in his framework, philosophy and religion actually doesn't collude or doesn't contradict, but philosophy is the highest because it is a highest source because it actually captures the real essence of everything, true knowledge of everything, ethics and whatnot, you can name it. And the religion is mere a representation, mere mirror image of philosophy. This is the Farabi's framework. And how Farabi develop this or apply this in politics or to develop the political philosophy? And he says happiness is the perfection of the soul. So when you, as opposed to modern rationalists, they actually refute the spirituality when they actually dichotomize spirituality and rationality. But according to Farabi, he just represented the Platonic tradition, says that when you go, when you sharpen your rational capacity, actually it lead you to perfection of your soul. So to perfect your soul, you need to develop your rationality. So there is a connection between the perfection of the soul and rationality. This is the right opposite to modern construction of rationality. Modern construction of rationality generally refute spirituality. But here you see, following the Platonic tradition, Farabi says there is a link between soul and rationality. So when you actually perform your rationality to a maximum extent, that brings peace and perfection to your soul. Actually, when you feel that perfection, only you feel the happiness. So perfect soul, actually, what does it mean? Perfect soul means that it will liberate yourself from the material demand, and it will bring godly essence within you. So you see, the rational deliberation actually liberates yourself, according to Farabi, following the Platonic tradition. Liberate yourself from materialistic inclinations of yourself and bring you to the closer to God. This is a different kind of rationality. You need to take this into account. And so, how do you perfect yourself? And so, perfect yourself by virtuous action. So, once you deliberate deeply, once you develop your rational capacity, it will also help you to perform virtuous actions. So when you do virtuous actions, right actions, that will lead you to the perfect soul. So in order to, a philosopher can self-regulate himself. He can self-regulate and self-empower his soul. But the general public cannot. So for that purpose, there should be a political leader. The political leader will lead the city to perfect the souls of citizens, to develop the rational capacity of the citizens, so that they will also do the perfect virtuous acts. It will lead them to achieve perfection of the soul, of their soul. So political leaders' main task is obviously to lead the city towards the perfection of the souls of citizens. So virtuous city, so once the leader achieved that target of transforming the entire city into a perfect city, means in that city now everyone have the happy soul because of their virtuous action. So this is the perfect virtuous city, an ideal city, the city of true happiness for Farabi. So, in order to do this task, Farabi says, philosopher need to have two qualities. Either he should have a philosophical knowledge and religious knowledge. Because philosophical knowledge can only help some people to believe in the philosopher's instructions. Most of them will not understand philosophy. So, to convince the general public, the ruler must have religious knowledge. So combining both, the rulers can convince the citizens of the city to perform virtuous actions. So consequently, the city will transform into a virtuous city. So philosophy and religion are must. The knowledge over the philosophy and religion are two important knowledge sources that each and every ruler must possess. And so he brings Prophet Muhammad as a model. He says Prophet Muhammad is actually a philosopher prophet, because according to Farabi, he has the rational capacity and also he has an imaginative faculty, meaning it's a revelation. So actually in his understanding, Farabi's understanding, Prophet Muhammad brought revelation for the general public, and actually he also produced philosophical knowledge for the elite-minded people. This is the understanding of Farabi. So this philosopher, the Prophet Muhammad should be called as a philosopher prophet. according to Al-Farabi. So this is the kind of a different layout or template of Islamic political philosophy, which actually rooted in rationalist tradition, which developed by Al-Farabi. And so, I have 4 minutes. In conclusion, I tried to say 3 things. So 3 important aspects that you need to remember: revelation and reason in Islamic tradition. So reason and revelation played a key role in developing 2 different strands of political philosophy in the Islamic history. Revelation centered ethics, actually developed by Asharis, adopted Mawardi, and adopted by Mawardi, and he went in to develop a whole Islamic theory of caliphate based on that. So Islamic theory of caliphate is rooted in epistemological understanding of reason. And Farabi went into another direction. He actually prioritized reason, so he ended up developing a totally contrasting set of political principles. And but what is the similarity between both Farabi and Mawardi? Spiritual development and religion both played a vital role in shaping political imaginations of both classical thinkers. Yes, Farabi, though he actually gave a privileged position to reason, he did not reject revelation. Rather, he said revelation also must be part of the city perfect state, because revelation is for public. So there should be a strong presence of religion even within a Farabi's political thinking. This is the kind of a similarity we can say. What is the difference? Sunni political theory is closer to democracy, because Sunni political theory is based on revelation. So revelation is, revelation is for everyone. Meaning anyone can read the revelation and understand Islamic ethics, so that anyone can come to rule a city, no problem at all. There is Sunni political theory doesn't say, or Islamic worldview doesn't say any particular class of people only have the right to interpret the text. No, anyone can read and interpret the text, understand the text, following particular methodologies. So this is very democratic understanding of revelation. So Islamic Sunni political theory is very much closer to Islamic, very much closer to democracy. But while Farabi's concept is very closer to epistocracy, meaning to say of Plato. Meaning, so in Farabi says, a real knowledge can only be achieved, or real knowledge can only be acquired by only by few people, philosophers. So that privilege gives them to become the ruler. So automatically there will be a ruling class who is given priority or privilege to rule over the people other than the public mass. So Farabi's concept is sort of we say epistocracy, meaning a few knowledgeable people can only have the privilege to rule. But in Sunni political theory it's different, which is very much closer to democracy. With this note, I conclude my today's presentation. If you have any questions or comments, you can share. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Thank you very much for great sharing today. We have a question on the chat box, Dr. There is question on the chat box.
Right. Yeah, is there any difference between Khalifa and Sultan in Islamic political theory? Because Sultan came from Uthmani era. Is they developed? I would say that Sultan. The problem with Sultan and Caliph emerged or at least became predominant in the Abbasid period because of emerging new sultans. They actually acquired many territories. They became the true rulers. So emergence of Sultan posted a great dilemma in Islamic political theory, because classical Islamic political theory before the Abbasids, just they believed that Muslim Ummah should have one ruler, which is the Caliph. Caliph should be the absolute ruler. But that theory come under severe attack in the new political developments. Why so many sultans started to dominate and rule different parts of the Muslim world. So which created a conflict of power among these two institutions. And Sultan actually had the real power and the Caliph as a nominal power for the namesake. So this created a problem of legitimacy because Sultan said that I have the power, so I can rule. Caliph said, I have the power of legitimacy of I have the religious legitimacy because I am just the continuation of the earliest caliphs. So this conflict actually predominantly came into forth, and so because of this, there are several conflicts happened, and Mawardi actually reconciled this problem. Saying that yes, so many, as much as sultans can come and control the territories, but on there he cannot actually delegitimize or wage war against the caliph because it is a red line. It is the red line. And he actually proposed a new mechanism that sultans must seek the support of caliph, and to say otherwise, that sultan needs to legitimize themselves through actually showing their allegiance to the caliph. So thereafter, sultans, because caliph has the religious legitimacy, sultans also knew in the Abbasid period that they cannot rule over the population if they don't have if they don't show the allegiance to the caliph. So because people will not accept them, people will revolt against them. So sultans, since they, in order to sustain their power, they actually accepted the proposal of Mawardi, and they started or at least showed allegiance or just expressed their allegiances to the caliph in case of formality. And so caliph started accepting the allegiances, and sultans in different parts of the world acted as this representative of the caliphs in those territories. So this is how the new power arrangement emerged after the writings of Al-Mawardi. So in that sense, Mawardi played a crucial role understanding the changing political realities of the Abbasid period and developed a new mechanism of power sharing, new mechanism of governance to navigate that dilemma or conflict between the sultan and the caliph through his book, which I discuss in this presentation.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
I think it's time up. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Doctor.
Inshallah. Thank you.
Inshallah, we will see you next week, Doctor.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Jasmawati.
Yes, I'm here.
Alhamdulillah. So today we have a little bit technical problem. So Dr. Jasmawati will replace with Dr. Muhammad Ferdaus, inshallah. We have known already Dr. Jasmawati for last week. So without further ado, Doctor will present replacement from Dr. Muhammad Ferdaus on the topic contribution of early Muslim scholar on the concept of the soul, inshallah. فليتفضل مأجورة, Doctor. The space is yours.
Right. Thank you so much, Sister Jaria. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to all respected participants of this short IIIT short course Introduction to Human Sciences. So I am going to continue with the lecture, and the topic this week is contributions of early Muslim scholars. So I am so sorry for the glitches that we face today, but inshallah we will cover up the syllabus. Right, so practically this is my overview. I will be doing a recapping on the definition of psychology, and then I will be delivering lectures on the contribution of two major Muslim scholars, who is Ibn Sina and Al-Ghazali. So these Ibn Sina and Al-Ghazali's contribution to the context or the comprehension of soul of human being. Okay. All right. So first of all, I would like to recap or do some kind of revision on psychology, definition of psychology. So what missing here is that with the common or mainstream culture mainstream psychology study, the definition of psychology goes as systematic understanding of human behavior and mental processes. So it seems to be the very nature of all the theories presented under this Western perspective of psychology practically look into observable matters, right? Look into observable matters in the mode of human behavior. And though mental processes, it happens inside of the human body, right? It is unobservable, but it is still able to be studied. We have certain machineries, for example, that can gauge into the electrical processes that happen in the brain, for example. So we are still able to understand those contexts of mental processes. But practically, what is prevalent in the study of psychology as of now, according to the mainstream discipline of psychology, is we study most of the time observable entities. There are unobservable entities that we study, such as mental processes, but it depends on the manifestation of those processes in terms of behavior. Right, so perhaps if we were to define it differently, from the Islamic point of view, using the terminology of this can be the definition, right? Systematic understanding of human behavior, mental processes, and soul, right? Or systematic understanding of human behavior, mental processes, and soul from Quran and Sunnah. But what we want to sort of like emphasize here is an alternative definition coined in such a way, right? This can be still refuted and still refined. So we are talking about systematic study of the manifestation of the soul in the form of behaviors and mental processes. So that's what we are trying to sort of like incorporate, as opposed to the mainstream definition of definition of psychology that is commonly used by so many people now. Okay, so that is the context. So again, this is why we the action now is to rejuvenate the conception of soul, the understanding of the conception of soul in the discipline of psychology as per now, as the alternative perspective to the existing one. So in summary, we can look into this diagram. So this is psychology or human behavior, for example, or human being. So definitely we are affected by environmental factors, things around us, all right, things inside us, our own self and things inside us, environmental factors. So we are trying to put into this context the comprehension and understanding of the entity of soul, right? So soul can directly contribute to the behavior of human behavior, human behavior, and so also can be the factors intervening, right? Factors intervening between the environmental factors and definitely human being or human behavior. So this is very rough idea or rough diagram that we are proposing. Somehow it still need to be refined, and further research has to be done in order for us to really understand the accurate structure of how soul play its role in determining human behavior. All right. Okay. So here, the question is, what actually is the soul? So that's why we want to look into the contribution of the Muslim scholars with regards to the conception of souls. Right, so before we get into the contribution of the Muslim scholars, I'd like to sort of like recap. These are, psychology is considered as a scientific discipline. So when we label psychology as a scientific discipline somehow, so it follows through the science paradigm, the paradigm of science. Right, so we know that the paradigm of science, first of all, there should be an empirical evidences to whatever we say. And definitely there are step-by-step processes that we have to embark on while we do our research based on the scientific paradigm. So in psychology, based on the scientific paradigm, there are goals of psychology that usually we subscribe ourselves to. Right, so the first one is to describe. Right, the first one is to describe the phenomenon of a human being. How human being, who they are, the characteristic of human being, the personality, the attitude, so on and so forth. Right, so that is the first one. Right, and then it is also meant to describe the interaction between man and the cosmos and the human environmental factors. Right, that is the lowest level of the goals of psychology, modern psychology. Right, modern psychology. And then the next stage, a bit more advanced than just to describe, is to explain. So we want to explain rather than just describing man is as such, the interaction of man between man and the cosmos and the environment is as such, rather than just describing, we would like to explain. So when we explain, we give a certain justification why people behave in such a way. Right, so that is the second stage of the goal of modern psychology. And the third stage is to predict, knowing the common connection between man and the cosmos, and how the environmental factors it influence man, so we would be able to predict, right? To predict, knowing one's personality. Now, in the future, with that kind of personality, will he or she able to be a good worker, for example, or a good student? So that is another level, right? So another level. So the highest level for modern psychology is the control. Right, to control the behavior. So that is actually the highest level of the modern psychology, or the goals of psychology, the goals of modern psychology, to control. All right. So we are looking into this context in terms of the science of the soul. When we want to rejuvenate the context of soul into the study or understanding of human behavior, we consider to control of behavior actually is the lowest level. Right? Is the lowest level. To what extent should we control our behavior? All right, to the point that we are able to fulfill the role of ourselves as the abid and khalifa towards Allah, and then to control ourselves to be able to obtain Allah's redha. All right, so that is kind of a rough conception that we are trying to put out forward to all participants. Right, so to think over, this is actually the why we need to rejuvenate the conception or understanding of the soul into psychology. Okay, so we can see here to describe, explain, predict, and control, those are the goals of psychology as subscribed by the modern psychology or the mainstream psychology as of now. And we would like to look into the aspects of controlling behavior as the lowest level, meaning that we have advanced level, much advanced level, or much higher level after controlling, right? To subscribe ourselves to the oneness, where it takes more than just controlling our behavior, right? So that is the context, the whole thing. And now, let's look into Ibn Sina's contributions to the science of soul. All right. So Ibn Sina maintained a dualistic view of the body and soul. So it is saying here, Ibn Sina believed that the body and soul are distinct entities. Okay, distinct entities. The soul is not just a function or property of the body, but a separate, independent substance. Okay, so that is the context, dualistic view of the body. And I hope participants still remember, I draw the diagram of dualistic nature of human being, the material part and the immaterial part. Right, so that is very general ideas, some summary of what I want to deliberate here. Okay, so again, Ibn Sina actually maintained dualistic view of the nature, dualistic view of human being. The human being is composed of the material body and the immaterial soul. Right. So here he is saying that the soul is connected to the body and functions through it, but remains an independent substance. Okay. All right. And then the body, we look at the body as a medium through which the soul expresses itself into the physical world. All right. But then, so we're talking about a body which is material medium, and then the soul which is immaterial medium. All right, immaterial medium. So the body actually is the vehicle by which the soul expresses itself in the physical world. But again, although the body is the vehicle, the soul maintains its characteristic, which is, or its true essence, which is non-material, and definitely has a lot of this capacity known as intellectual capacity. Okay, so the interaction is necessary for the soul's earthly existence, but once it gains sufficient knowledge and detaches from bodily desire, it ascends toward a purely intellectual existence, further emphasizing the soul's independence. So this is what meant by independent substance, the soul as an independent substance. So the interaction between the body and the soul is definitely required because of what? We exist in this earth, all right? So our earthly existence require this prominent interaction or pertinent interaction between the body and the soul, all right? But you know, once the soul gains sufficient knowledge and detaches itself from the vehicle, the material vehicle, the body, all right, it will be able to ascend towards a purely intellectual existence. So that captures the true essence of the soul, which is non-material and definitely intellectual. All right. So when it goes up to the intellectual level, that further emphasizes the soul's independent nature. All right. So that is the context of the conception of soul by Ibn Sina. So again, I would like to sort of like summarize. So the body will be serving as the medium or vehicle that enables the soul to express itself and carry out actions in the physical world. Right. So this means the soul's capabilities, like intellect and its willpower, all right, will be manifested through the bodily functions. Okay. Despite its connection to the body, the soul's true nature is non-material and purely intellectual. Right? It is not confined to physical properties, but exists beyond the material world. Right? So perhaps it is quite complex, but that is actually the true essence of the existence of the body, the material part of the vehicle to our human being, and then the very essence of the soul as non-material and practically intellectual. Okay. When I mention this interaction, the third point, this interaction is necessary for the soul earthly existence. This is actually indicative of the interaction between the material body and the immaterial soul. But once it gains sufficient knowledge and detaches from bodily desire, it ascends toward a purely intellectual existence, further emphasizing the soul independence. Okay, so if the soul is able to gain sufficient knowledge and detaches itself from the bodily desires and limitations. You know, sometimes I think we are all very much familiar when we are in our body. Actually, sometimes the body hindered us from looking right towards the truth. Right? They become some kind of veil. Right? They become some kind of veil to our own self. So once the soul gains sufficient knowledge and detaches itself from bodily desires and limitation, not detach itself from the material body, but from the bodily desires and limitation, it will be able to transcend toward a higher, purely intellectual existence. Alright, so this process is indicative of the soul's journey away from the material world. So that is the context. Okay. Alright, so here, summarizing the point, we can say that Ibn Sina ultimately highlights the context of independence of the soul. Right. So despite its temporary connection to the body, the soul's true essence remains unaffected and distinct, capable of reaching higher state once free. Right? Once it is free from any physical constraint. So that is the very nature or the essence of the soul when it comes to the word that is stated here, independent substance, meaning that it can pave a way independently to achieve further or higher existence, all right, towards the pure subscription to God. Okay, now Ibn Sina synthesized Neoplatonic and Aristotelian thought with Islamic theology to the understanding of the soul. Okay, so he sort of like combined Neoplatonism. So Neoplatonism emphasizes the idea of existence of a higher immaterial reality. So this is what Neoplatonic group of people stress on. The most pertinent point stressed or upheld by this Neoplatonic group. So they emphasize the existence of a higher immaterial reality. So what is Aristotelian philosophy? So Aristotelian philosophy focus on logical, empirical examination of the world. Right. So these two, Ibn Sina sort of like synthesize this Neoplatonic and Aristotelian paradigm or thought with Islamic psychology. So this synthesis allowed him to develop a unique view of the soul that harmonized Greek philosophical traditions with Islamic metaphysical principles. Okay, so this is the context, all right, that we should understand it. Soul is considered as immaterial, indivisible substance, distinct from the body, drawing from both Aristotle and Neoplatonism. Right. So unlike material entities, Ibn Sina argued that the soul is self-subsistent. Right. And I think I did describe how independent it is. Right. So the word self-subsistent is another word that can use to describe it, meaning that it does not rely on the body for its ultimate existence, right? For its ultimate existence. Okay, so in other words, Ibn Sina argued that the soul is an immaterial. Immaterial here means non-physical and indivisible. Indivisible here means it cannot be broken down into parts. Right, so this means that unlike physical objects, which are made of divisible components, the soul is a unified, non-material entity that exists independently of the body. Okay? So before I get into the slides, I would like to sort of like deliberate a bit more. With regards to the word here, unlike material entities, Ibn Sina argued that the soul is self-subsistent, meaning it does not rely on the body for its existence. So here, in other words, we are saying that the soul is distinct from the body. Right? So Ibn Sina stressed that the soul is distinct from the body. So this idea also came from both Aristotle's concept of the soul being the form of the body but not identical to it, and Neoplatonic thought, which emphasized the soul's higher immaterial nature. So Neoplatonic group of people, they are thinking, or they are using this paradigm saying that the soul has a higher, the soul is its particular nature, it has a higher immaterial nature, right? It has a higher immaterial nature. So although the soul is connected to the body and functions through the body, they remain fundamentally different entities. Okay? Right, so with this word, self-subsistent, right, so it means it does not depend on the body for its existence. While the soul interacts with the body to express itself in the physical world, right, it is not reliant on the body for its own being. So this is actually a key distinction between material entities which depend on external factors, for example, the body needing foods, and the soul which is independent of such needs. Okay, so that's the very nature of soul and the material body being described by Ibn Sina. Okay, Ibn Sina also argued that the soul is immaterial and conscious independently of sensory experience. Alright, independently of sensory experience. When it is being described as immaterial, right, it means that it is not made of any physical matters. When it is described as conscious on its own, it is existent, it can exist without needing sensory inputs from the body, right? So this idea challenges the view that consciousness is a product of the brain or physical senses, right? Okay, so according to Ibn Sina, soul can exist and function in a purely non-material state. Right, so it is able to even perceive reality without needing to rely on physical organs or sensory experiences. So that's the explication of the point on this slide. Okay, Ibn Sina argues the soul as immaterial and conscious and independently of sensory experiences. Okay. Here, just now I mentioned about the word consciousness, right? Similarly, the word self-awareness. Self-awareness is actually a fundamental and inherent quality of the soul by its very nature, meaning that the soul possesses this particular characteristic. It is aware of itself without having to depend on any external factors or stimuli. Okay. So the soul is capable of understanding and perceiving its own existence independently and does not depend on the physical body. Okay, so I would like to repeat this point, awareness of itself. Okay, so Ibn Sina maintained that self-awareness is essential and an inherent quality of the soul, right? So this means by its very nature, by the soul's very nature, the soul is aware of its own existence without requiring any external stimuli or input. So this is definitely unlike the body, right? So the body depends on sensory information for our body to function. Definitely we have to depend on the use of our sensory organs. When we use our sensory organs, we get to be in the process of sensing our world, the world around us. And then based on the sensation processes that we are involved in the process of perception, for example. And everything actually, the body needs to function in that way, physical way of functioning. Okay? This is actually an example being given. Ibn Sina's famous thought experiment, the flying man. So perhaps participants later on can sort of like find more information about this experiment, flying man, just to get to understand about this whole context of the independency of the soul, and definitely the soul owning the capacity of being aware of its very essence. Okay? So with regards to how Aristotle influenced the conception of soul by Ibn Sina, practically Ibn Sina categorized the soul into three parts: rational soul, animal soul, and vegetative soul. Okay. So these are the deliberation of the different types of categories of soul as being labeled by Ibn Sina. So vegetative soul, right? So this is the nature of vegetative soul. It is responsible for basic biological functions such as growth and reproduction, shared by animals, plants, animals, and human. Whereas the animal souls, this is actually the part of soul that governs the sensory perception and movement, common to both animals and human. And rational soul, this is the one faculty which is unique to human being. Right, this component is definitely responsible for the intellect, reasoning, and abstract thought capacities of human being. Okay, so this is what makes us different from other living entities. So each level represents a hierarchy in the soul's capacity, with the rational soul as the highest and capable of knowing universal truth. Right, knowing universal truth. So it seems to be that the conception of vegetative soul is the lowest level, the animal is the second level, and the highest is actually the rational soul. Okay, so further deliberation of the rational soul. So we want to look into the rational soul and get to know its faculty, the faculty of rational soul. Right, so Ibn Sina proposed that the human intellect, right? So we're talking about human intellect now. So human intellect is a function of the faculty of the rational soul, right? So the rational soul is the highest, higher aspects of human being that is responsible for the aspects of reasoning, the capacity of man's capacity of reasoning and man's capacity of intellectual activity. So according to Ibn Sina, it is through this rational faculty that humans are capable of higher thought and reasoning processes. Okay? So in this context, he introduced the term of active intellect. So active intellect is an external the concept of active intellect is a concept indicating that it is indicating an external universal source of knowledge. Okay, so the active intellect serves as a source of universal knowledge, which individual access through intellectual abstraction. Okay. In other words, this active intellect is seen as the repository, okay, repository of universal knowledge, meaning that these active intellects contain all possible forms and truth about reality. So it contains all of those things, all possible forms of truth, all possible forms and truth about realities. So the individual intellect will tap into this external source to obtain intellectual and abstract knowledge. Okay? The human intellect on its own cannot create knowledge, but can receive it from the active intellect through a specific process. Okay? The process is known as the intellectual abstraction. So what is intellectual abstraction? So it refers to the process by which the mind or intellect isolates and focuses on the general essence or concept of something by ignoring its specific concrete details. Okay, let me give you an example. When we are thinking about a tree, let's say when we are thinking about a tree, So the intellect abstracts the universal idea of a tree from the individual characteristic of a specific tree, such as their shape, their size, or color. Right. So the intellect will be focusing on the essential, unchanging nature of the object, which is the tree. Right. So tree, for example, we can have like different types of trees, different shapes of trees, different types of tree leaves. For example, most of the time, the leaves of trees is green, for example. But distinctly we can find leaves of a tree that is red in color. For example, the Japanese maple, for example, right, or even the maple tree. Their leaves are actually red in color. But then when we are using this intellectual abstraction capacity will be pointing up to the unchanging or common characteristic of a tree. Right, so that's how we function. Okay, so the intellect focuses on this intellectual abstraction will be focusing on the essential unchanging nature of the object, ignoring the individual variation that may exist in the material world. Right, so most of the time we'll be looking into the trees and the leaves will definitely be red, but we do accept the fact that there are a very distinct type of trees that perhaps may have different colors of the leaf. Rather than red, rather than green, it's something else. Right, most of the time red, for example. Okay, so that is how we sort of like understand the whole conception of our cosmos. So here, for Ibn Sina, the soul achieves knowledge by receiving forms from the active intellect, a process that bridges human reason with the divine knowledge, right? With the divine knowledge. Okay, in other words, Ibn Sina believed that the soul acquires knowledge by receiving forms from the active intellect. These forms are not physical shapes, but rather universal concepts or ideas that represent the essence of certain things, just like the tree just now. So the essence of the tree, its trunk is upright, for example, and the root actually will be permeating itself under the earth, for example, and then the branches will be branching out, and then the leaves actually will be found at the end of the branches, for example. So that is actually the universal concepts, right? And these universal concepts will be the essence that represent the genre of a tree, for example. Okay, so the interaction between human reason and the active intellect is what allows the soul to bridge human understanding with divine or universal knowledge. Right. So this process of receiving forms is how human beings move beyond the sensory experience and attain higher abstract knowledge of reality. So we have like some kind of schema in ourselves, all right, based on this universal knowledge, source of universal knowledge, and this universal source of universal knowledge is being accessed by human beings via the process of intellectual abstraction, whereby we will look into the general essence or schema, basic concept or basic schema of something while ignoring its specific concrete details. So we will get to know that the moment a word tree is mentioned, so we can get into the very essence of the genre of a tree. For example, the upright trunk, the roots that will be permeating under the earth, for example, and then the branches, the leaves, the very common essence of the word tree, for example. But then we do understand the fact that there are variations to this general essence. Okay, so that's how we get to understand about our cosmos, and that is also the way we are able to bridge, all right, our human reasoning, our own reasoning, human reasoning, with that of the divine knowledge, right? Because divine knowledge most of the time it exists in metaphysical form, all right, and then you understand the very general essence of it, and then you'll get to understand the whole bulk of the divine reality. Okay, so that is the contribution of Ibn Sina, all right, Ibn Sina. Now we will move into Al-Ghazali. I'm so sorry because there are a little bit more on the Al-Ghazali. Okay, so now Again, Al-Ghazali also mentioned about the dual nature of human being. He posited, or he sort of like identified that humans comprise both physical and spiritual dimension. So the word used here is physical dimension, which is material dimension of man, similar to that of Ibn Sina, and the spiritual dimension of man, similar to the immaterial soul described by Ibn Sina. Okay, so the physical dimension is the material body, which characteristic is very much temporary and definitely subject to decay. So that is the true material dimension or physical dimension of us man, right, human being. Whereas the spiritual dimension is represented by the word by soul, the word an-nafs, which is divine and which is immortal. All right, which is divine and which is immortal. So these are actually the characteristic of the soul as described by Al-Ghazali. Right. So according to Islamic theology as well as the thoughts of Al-Ghazali, right, the soul is a creation of Allah, definitely. And unlike the body, it is not subject to the physical law that governs the material body. So that is the distinction made by him on the soul as opposed to the body. Right, soul is a creation of Allah and is not bound by physical laws that govern the material world. Right, so that is the characteristic. While the body is bound by time, right, so definitely the body is bound by time, by space, and laws of nature. Right, what kind of laws of nature that govern our body? The law of aging, for example, the law of decay, for example. So the soul, on the other hand, is a non-material entity. So it exists beyond this limitation. It is not bound by space, it is not bound by the law of nature or even time. Right, it operates under a different set of spiritual law. Right, so that is actually the law that governs our soul, and this law, spiritual law, is governed by the divine principles rather than the physical or the natural ones. So that is the characteristic of soul. All right, the soul is eternal or immortal. All right, soul is eternal and does not cease to exist after the death of the physical, and does not cease to exist, meaning that it continues to exist. All right, it will continue to exist even after the death of the physical body. All right, so the word immortal, right? The word immortal carries on the meaning that the soul will continue to live beyond the material life of the body. So this view holds that while the body perishes and decays, the soul will remain intact and enters into a different phase of existence. All right. And the soul, again, it is accountable in the afterlife for its action in this world. Alright? Okay, the soul will be held accountable, and the accountability is actually a core part of the another world that we will venture in, right? The afterlife world. Alright. So each soul will face judgment by Allah based on its moral and spiritual conduct during the life. So that is actually the basis of the deeds of the soul. So the soul deeds, whether good or bad, will determine its fate in the afterlife. So that is the description by Ghazali onto the nature of soul. Right. So the fate of the soul in the afterlife will depend on its moral and spiritual state at the time of the death. So if our soul lived righteously with strong faith and good actions, will be rewarded with eternal bliss in the paradise. Conversely, on the other hand, if the soul has accumulated sinful actions or lived in disbelief, right, so definitely it will face punishment, right? So the concept of heaven and hell, the concept of reinforcement as well as punishment. Right, so this understanding places a very great emphasis or pertinent emphasis on the moral and spiritual integrity in this life. Because of what? It will directly influence the soul's eternal destination. Okay, so on this point, Ghazali also stressed on he stressed on the importance of spiritual purification, because we are talking about the afterlife, and the soul will continue living into the face and will be responsible to accept its own deed, right? Whether being punished or being reinforced, right? The concept of heaven and hell, right? So here, Ghazali emphasized the importance of the context of spiritual purification. Spiritual purification is the soul's ultimate salvation. To attain the eternal bliss in the afterlife. Our soul has to be purified. How do we purify our soul? Following a righteous path. Okay, this includes lots of the ritualistic things that we are aware of. Definitely repentance from sin, upholding moral integrity. So that is the considered as righteous path. And definitely, we definitely have to maintain a deep faith in Allah. Right, connect ourselves to the highest being, right, our Creator. Okay, so here, spiritual purification involves cleansing of the soul from the worldly desires, sins, as well as distraction. In the world, there are lots of distraction, and that we might go astray and perform certain types of sins, for example. So that's require us to purify again and again, purify the soul, and the spiritual purification is definitely pertinent means for us to attain the moral integrity, and definitely very important to destine or to put up where do we go after life, right? Whether we want to be punished or we want to be given the right kind of reinforcement. Okay, so here, these are the categorization, three primary categorization or three primary stages of the soul. Nafsul Mutmainnah, the highest one, the tranquil soul. Nafsul Lawamah, the self-reproaching soul. And Nafsul Ammara, the commanding soul. Okay.
Doctor,
Yeah.
we have passed 4 minutes.
Okay. I think this concept is very very well known to all participants. All right, but hopefully I am able to. These are all the description of the Nafsul Mutmainnah, Lawamah, as well as Amara. All right, and then a little bit on the purification of the soul, the process, whereby Al-Ghazali placed a strong emphasis on knowledge. All right, and that is very, very important in order for us to be able to do this soul purification. All right, so I will submit these slides, and inshallah all participants will be able to do a bit of a reading based on the slides. Right, you can search for information with regards to the spiritual insight, the ma'rifah, the purification of the soul, tazkiyah, and so on and so forth. So I am so sorry for going over the time. Thank you so much for listening, and that's all from me. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for your sharing today. Alhamdulillah, and I hope all participants can grab all the benefitful knowledge today. Hopefully, inshallah, we can see you again, doctors, in the next session. Inshallah. Thank you very much, Doctor. To all participants, alhamdulillah, today we have completed our fourth session today. Inshallah, all the slides I will put in the Google Drive. And sorry also for last week's, the slides still with me. Inshallah, I will put it this week's, inshallah, together with week 4. And hopefully we can see you guys on the next session, inshallah. And thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you. With that, we close our class today with tasbih kifarah and surah al-as. Subhanallah wa bihamdih, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, asyhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. وبالله التوفيق والهداية والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.